today. You're welcome.
All right, welcome to day 2 of the budget hearing for the Lincoln City Council. Mr. Carlson, please take it away.
I will do that. Good morning, council members. Thanks again for holding these sessions to give us a chance to have some conversation and help the viewing public know more about the budget, their budget that we're working to put together for their community. Today we'll continue presentations from departments on information details about those investments, on services, programs, and infrastructure for the community. As was the case yesterday, budget staff and myself are here to take notes, and we'll be able to get additional information and questions for you afterwards if they're not answered here. And with that, I'd like to invite first up Maggie Stuckey-Ross, the new director from Lincoln Parks and Recreation, to talk with you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Director. It's been how long on the job now?
You.
2 weeks? 3?
I think we can say 3 weeks now.
Let's jump into a budget hearing.
Let's say 2 weeks, though. Well, I'm happy to be here representing the department and our extraordinary staff. I have brought some backup as well. Obviously, this was prepared before I began this role, and so hopefully the team approach is appropriate here, and we can answer any questions you have. I'll be reviewing the highlights of our 2022-24 budget, developed in collaboration with our team. We're investing in what brings Lincoln together, not what divides us, and building on the smart and strategic choices that were made in the previous 2 budgets. So let's start with our mission. Lincoln Parks and Recreation is fundamental, fun is our favorite word, to youth development, active and healthy living for all, livable neighborhoods and families, environmental stewardship, special places and events, and economic development. Some photos there from our recent dedication at Cascade Fountain, which was a wonderful event. 450 people came. And this mission comes to life every day thanks to our dynamic team, people full of incredible talent and commitment to our cause. As this slide indicates, our team is divided into 5 sections: the administration section, park operations, recreation, planning and facilities, and municipal golf. So let's start with our funding sources for Parks and Recreation and all the critical civic infrastructure that's under our umbrella. 73% of our funding comes from the general fund, 7% from Keno, 2% from the Parks and Rec Maintenance and Repair Fund, and 18% from Golf Fund. And now to our expenditures. As you can see on the chart, 49% goes to personnel, 14% is designated as transfers to the CIP, 3% to debt service, under 1% to capital outlays, 6% to materials and supply, and 27% is designated as other services and charges, which includes rent, contractual services, data processing, and utilities. Like all city departments, our team has a deep commitment to hard work, innovation, efficiency, and customer service. You can see on this slide the roll-up personnel summary for our team, which shows a net FT growth of nearly 1. This is primarily due to the redesignation of some specific recreation staff to a different category. Our department believes fundamentally in the power and the purpose and the potential of parks, so we'd like to talk briefly about how our budget reflects this belief and supports Lincoln's growing economy. Our budget protects the health and safety of our families and communities. The budget before you has continued investments in our programs and facilities. We all know that parks and trails support physical and mental well-being. We continue to see increased trail usage since the pandemic. We're currently seeing about a 20% increase in uses. Investments in playgrounds, pools, and recreation centers to provide welcoming facilities for all people to engage in active living and support a thriving community. And of course, community forestry to remove and replant ash trees, to treat ash trees, to respond to storm events, and to proactively prune city trees. Through these investments, Parks and Rec will continue to care for what we have and protect our community. Next, our budget invests in economic development and increased customer service. We aim to implement creative and innovative strategies to create an equitable park system. We're driven by input and engagement from the community that will use these facilities, while also being welcoming to new uses from the diverse population that lives here. What you'll see in our budget is continued investments in capital projects to maintain levels of service and improve access and opportunities for all citizens across the community. Specifically, we want to point out the new Air Park Recreation Center and Williams Branch Library construction project in Air Park, renovation of 5 playgrounds, which is the standard system that we have in place, 6 new neighborhood parks, 4 new segments of trails totaling 5.3 miles, and additional support for the South Haymarket Park development. Our budget shows a commitment to building infrastructure that supports a strong and resilient Lincoln. Our budget takes care of existing park infrastructure, sidewalks, park roads, drinking fountains, lighting, pools, roofs, pumps, etc. We have increased community forestry funding, again, for tree pruning to reduce potential property damage, very important. Planting trees to lower heating and cooling costs and decrease greenhouse gases associated with climate change. And of course, EAB treatment and recovery. There's also additional funding for EV and alternate fuel fleet vehicles. I practiced that so many times, alternate fuel fleet vehicles, to reduce greenhouse gases and lower fuel costs. With these investments, we're preparing Lincoln's park facilities to do tomorrow for Lincoln what we can't do today. And finally, we will be growing an equitable and inclusive community with a high quality of life. Our work must support the social resilience of Lincoln. We all know the tensions in our community. We know there are needs not being met. So our work continues to create and maintain spaces that welcome all voices and provides equitable park access for all. Specifically, let's talk about the school-age programs, allows parents to work while their children learn and play. We currently have 389 children participating in our modified summer day camps each day. Support is included for the incorporation of inclusive play equipment across the system. Support is included for the F Street Community Center, which provides daily meals for older adults and youth, distributes donated food and supplies, and facilitates services for neighborhood residents. And finally, the community learning centers, which are supporting successful youth, thriving families, and strong neighborhoods. We will continue to emphasize programming that is safe, inclusive, culturally relevant, and welcoming to all. Let's move into some of our metrics. Our first slide is focused on our goals for community forestry. 3 are related to the ongoing challenges of the emerald ash borer. 1 is the removal of public ash trees with a measure of removing 800 trees annually. The second is planting trees to replace the ash trees that we have removed. Again, a goal to plant 800 trees, 1 for 1. And the third is the treatment of 1,700 public ash trees annually to help change the curve so we're not dealing with everything all at once. And then finally, we have a metric here related to the street tree pruning cycle, our goal being a 15-year pruning cycle. And our second page of metrics are more varied. First, we have our metric for maintaining the percent of population within a 10-minute walk of parks, hoping to keep that at 85%, which is the target goal. Secondly, sustaining or increasing the percentage of acres of parkland as compared to the acres of the city area, the goal being 11%. Third, a metric for the number of trail miles per square mile, and the goal is 1. And finally, setting a goal for the target number of golf rounds played annually, and the goal is 180,000 annually. The purpose of this slide is to lean in specifically to the customer service that is provided every day by our park operations team. We all know that there are misconceptions about the time distribution, and we must continue to communicate about the diverse hard work that this team is completing. You'll see on the side, for example, that mowing is only 15% of our team's time. Lots of other great services, customer services that are providing, ranging from flower bed maintenance to snow removal, event support, animal care, janitorial and cleaning, of course, equipment repair. There's a diverse amount of customer service that's provided by our team. And another window into the departmental customer service is our response to street tree removal needs. From incoming constituent calls to responding to storm damage, our forestry team is providing service often in time of crisis for our citizens. The fluctuations you're going to see on this chart are largely driven by storm events, and as we all know, they are continuing to happen with increasing intensity and more regularity. I'd like to spend a little bit of time addressing Lincoln City Golf. As you all know, golf is managed as an enterprise fund. Operating expenses and capital improvements are funded through revenues generated from golfer-paid green fees, golf CIP surcharge fees, golf rentals, membership, learning programs, and range balls. You can see on the bottom of the slide the golf operations budget for 21-22 was just over $4.2 million, and the proposal for 22-23 is $5.1. Another window into customer service at golf. We wanted to provide an overview for you of what's going on. Lincoln City Golf operates 81 holes of golf. We have seen golf usage increase by approximately 16% in the last 2 years, which has been an excellent addition for our golf program. Our last customer service survey showed participant satisfaction was at 86%. Pioneers Golf Course was the winner of the 2021 Lincoln's Choice Award for Best Golf Course. Wade assures me we're going to win this every year, so we're going to keep winning.
Is that a goal on the metric?
Yeah, we'll go back to the
Okay,
metrics here. Yes,
that'd be great.
the best.
Yeah.
Yes. Total golf rounds for 2021 was 209,787. The chart on the right is showing golf rounds played by golf course. So you can see we're fairly evenly distributed between the 4 18-hole courses, and then Jim Ager still coming in strong as well. And finally, here are the CIP revenue sources for golf. On the left, you're going to see where those dollars are coming from: advertising agreements, cell tower leases, CIP surcharge, and the Pioneers Golf irrigation surcharge. The golf 10-year facilities plan is shown on the pie chart on the right. Funding available is at $450,000. The gap is about $200,000. Challenges we continue to face in the golf program is funding the replacement of aging irrigation systems. Continued bond funding is a potential solution that we're looking at. So in summary, Lincoln Parks and Recreation supports wellness and quality of life for the Lincoln community through the development and management of parks and recreation programs and facilities, the conservation of natural resources areas, and management of public trees. And I and my team are happy to answer any questions, and we also will reserve the right to follow up on any questions you have as well. So thank you so much for your time.
All right, questions for Director, Councilwoman Raybould.
Thanks, Maggie, for being here and your first budget. The question I have, I know we've heard from a lot of constituents hoping to get in the budget an updated study on Wilderness Park from the last one that was done in 1999. Just want to double check, is that in your budget request for this year? Is that in Parks and Recs department, or is it coming out from a different department?
I'm going to look to JJ. I don't believe it's in our budget.
It is not an RCIP at this time.
No.
Okay. And then I'm looking at Sherry and John Carlson, because I think that was, definitely an item requested by a number of the council members, that we do an updated study so we can better understand with the growth of the city of Lincoln and how it might further impact Wilderness Park.
Yeah.
So that is a big request
Absolutely.
to follow up on.
And I think the department would be very supportive of moving forward with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I do. Thank you very much, Maggie.
Yes.
Welcome.
Advisory Board Member, Washington.
Thank you, Director. Could you, I know you gave a very quick thing about FTE. Would you go back through that, just a little bit more detail? So it's about 3.5 FTE in year 2. And could you explain a little bit more?
Yes, and I might ask Assistant Director Holly here.
Come forward.
Holly Lewis, Assistant Director of Recreation. The big addition in the second year is, of course, Air Park Rec Center. We're adding 2 new people in full-time positions, one as the assistant and one as the maintenance worker to maintain the building, and then some miscellaneous part-time people because we'll have more hours of operation, which we're excited about. And so that's for the recreation side. And then on the park side, we have a few new trail mileage and some new parks. So that comes with some seasonal hours as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Other questions? We'll give our council members just a moment to.
Fine.
Other questions? Councilman Show? No?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. No, I have no questions.
Okay.
One more question.
Certainly.
All right. I saw on the tree metric the goal of 800 trees. Let me flip back to that screen myself. And I noticed that right now the tree numbers are a little bit lower. They're at 237. Do you expect to meet target this year?
I'm going to turn to Mr. Myers. Do you want to come up?
A lot of the challenges.
We're going to have to drag you up for the microphone. I apologize.
A lot of the challenge that we've faced the last couple of years is getting product from the nurseries.
Okay.
And so since we don't plant ash trees and we don't plant maple trees, we're finding it a little more difficult to find a broader range of species to put back in. So hopefully it'll improve, continue to improve, and I know that we're planning to plant as many as we can.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Other questions? Okay, very good.
Okay.
Thank you. We appreciate your time this morning, Director.
Yes, thank
and
you.
everyone else,
Yes.
thank you. Appreciate it.
John, I want to do this right. Do I just advance? And I
Oh
believe
yeah, LPD's next.
Chief Ewens is up. Thank you very much.
I was told I don't have enough bodies here.
Yeah, don't you know you're supposed to bring a whole group with you?
I didn't know I was supposed to bring an entire crew. I'm impressed. But I do know that I need to take up golf. That's what I need to do.
Chief Ewens, good morning.
Good
Welcome.
morning. All right. Let me get my...
Her first budget presentation.
So be nice.
When they run out of the room and cheer after the budget presentation, I don't know.
I'd say that's good. That's
Yeah.
okay. I didn't bring enough people to cheer. Okay, thank you. All right, now I gotta figure out how to. Are we up? We're up. Okay. So thanks for having me. I'm very excited to do my first budget with all of you. Obviously, Lincoln Police Department. You know, the biggest thing is about public safety and equity and really improving as a police department moving forward into really 2022, 2023, you know, and what are we going to look like at the end of this budget cycle? And, you know, we've already made some great strides. The department is in a really good place. If you look at law enforcement across the nation, it is really, we have risen the bar in throughout time, actually. Technology, everything about what we do is really on par with where we should be today. So I have to multitasking and hit the thing while I turn my page. We, the members of the Lincoln Police Department, work with all people, are committed to providing quality services that promote a safe and secure community. Our organizational values, we're committed to preserving life and enhancing the quality of life in an inclusive and diverse community. An environment that encourages problem solving by both ourselves and the community. Being responsible for our actions and taking ownership for our work, our community, our profession, and each other. Educating ourselves and our community about the causes, resolution, and prevention of crime and disorder. Human dignity and the worth of all individuals. We talk a lot about being a good partner, and that's really important to all of us because our city partners, including even this board, is really such a foundation to who we are, and continuing that is is critical. So this is our org chart for our department. And as you can see on the operations side, it's very heavy. Operations is always the largest load for any department. There's so many different aspects of operations that have to be considered when you're putting together an org chart. And so I have Assistant Chief Jackson here and Assistant Chief Morrow for my support. And I'll call a friend if I need it moving forward at questions.
You only get 3 of those.
Well, I got 2. All right. So, so growing to improve safety, increase customer service and support, a high quality of life. I mean, these are very important areas for us to continuously focus on and increase. As the city increases in population, the more we need to adjust how we are. And that means bringing in, people that can complete grants specific to first responders, or a robust PIO, public information, really system, if you want to put it that way, because it is important for us to get all the information we can to the public in a timely manner. Obviously, we have the garage, we have the communication side. Improving the radio maintenance is always a struggle between that and technology is really a high cost because technology is costly. But having the right people in those positions actually helps us save money as well as coming up with new ideas and how do we move forward. Investing in positive community outcomes. So 76% is from the general fund. The police garage fees, the surcharge, 911, radio maintenance, 2%, grants and aid, Lancaster County. Obviously, the general fund is a good chunk of that, but I do think that it is an investment that we have shown that we've been very responsible for, and really apply this money in the right places. You see the increase to the 23-24, and that's because we really are moving towards being a medium city. We're no longer a small city, and in order to do that, we need to increase both in personnel, and that means sworn as well as unsworn. And how we do that moving forward is really looking at the gaps in which we provide service in many different ways. Right now, law enforcement is being asked to do different roles, mental health being one of those. And so it's very important that we answer that call and we adjust to that. And so there's a lot of planning involved in that and a lot of working with partners to really make that happen. And as we increase, there'll be officers that will be dedicated specifically to that. And so I'm really looking forward to putting that together. Investing in positive community outcomes. Again, we're talking about personnel services, capital outlay, materials and supplies. Those are things that we, again, this is really about community and what we provide to the community. And we can't ignore the fact that also what we're doing with our officers and their mental health, and the healthier our officers are, the more that will show in the public and how we are with them. Investments representing a commitment to a safe and growing community. Protect the safety and well-being of our families and community. 5 additional officers to increase safety across the community. 3 additional Lincoln Police Department civilian employees that free up uniform officers for operations. Invest in increased customer service, and grow an equitable and inclusive community with a high quality of life. I mean, this is very important that what we realize is that officers can't do everything. And so having that civilian component is incredibly important, both to help the officers to do their job, but also to answer questions of the public. Safe and healthy city, ensure public safety, health, and quality of life, build a more equitable, inclusive, and resilient city, and quality customer services to the community. Obviously, this is something that has been in the forefront of the last couple of years. And how do we do that? How do we do it better? And so I do think that the police department, once we build our numbers to where they should be, we'd be able to increase that ability to do that, to do just this. And then measuring success. As you can see, we really have hit our targets and have done that consistently. Obviously, when you talk about, all the way to 2022, we are the actual, let's just look at between 2020, 2021, and 2022, definitely in the 80 percentiles, exactly where we wanted to be, far above it. When you look at quality service audits and questions, I get a lot of phone calls of why people are calling, which they think that they're in trouble, but what they're being asked is, how did we do? And that is so impressive that this department and the city have committed to that, and it's ongoing, but it does show that we are doing our job at a very high level. Violent crime, it's down. I mean, there is, we have seen in the past month or two shootings. That is not something that we take lightly. But overall, violent crime is down in the city. And so when we talk about the outcomes and how we function both investigatively as well as our teams, I would say that we are operating at a very high level in which many of these homicides are solved in a very quick manner. We know who these people are, and we're getting the job done, and they're bringing them to, they go to jail. I mean, it's that simple, right? So it really is about understanding the violence when it does occur, and then answering to it. And then cities within 50,000 of Lincoln's population, we sit very well in regards to this. The violent crime per 100,000 residents decreased from 440 to 2020 down to 368, and 2021 is still being evaluated. The graph represents 2020 data for comparable cities, and so hopefully we'll be able to bring you that other data soon. In regards to response times, I mean, this is extremely important for all cities to actually have a bar and understand how quickly we're getting to calls for service. As you can see, we're at 81% response time between 2012 to 2021. Obviously, the last couple of years, with COVID, I try not to look at those years a lot of times because it's very difficult because times are different. Many people were at home, not working, not on the street. So that's a difficult couple of years that for me, I'd like to look beyond that and see what the average was before. But it is at 81%, we're hitting our mark. And so that's again, a very positive in how we are as a department. Community satisfaction, I love these numbers. Maintain a positivity response rate of 75% on the quality service audit question. How safe and secure do you feel in the neighborhood where you live is the main question. And when we do these, I mean, a lot of the negative things are about follow-up, that they're unable to get hold of a police officer that's handling their case. And so what we've done is every officer has a cell phone. Those started rolling out this last week. Majority of our officers and teams will have those phones, and so they won't be required, obviously, to answer them off duty, but they'll have access to their cell phones, but also email, and so they'll be able to respond in hopefully a more timely manner. Measuring success and improving performance. My apologies. Data and performance measures that inform our work and budget. I have to say that we're above every milestone that we've actually put in place, and I do feel very comfortable that we that we're hitting it, that we're using the money that we've been allocated in a very positive manner. And obviously we want to raise that bar when it comes to these numbers, but right now I feel very good about where we are and how we're going to move forward. And then burglary offenses, obviously total burglary offenses reported in Lincoln over the last 10 years. Again, it's down, decrease. Even when I say, the COVID time, 2019, 2020, you look beyond that, and we're looking at 1,800 to 2021, which is only 924. Can we improve and bring that number down? Yes, we can do that. And a lot of that is from education. A lot of that is looking at the trends, which is what we're very proactively doing. But I definitely think that the increase in video, whether it be Ring doorbells or just video in general, really assists us in getting these people into custody. Injury accidents, we're up. Well, we're lower than we were in 2018, but I do think that, again, we need to look at, obviously with the incident at O Street and other motorcycle collisions that we've seen that are incredibly concerning about speed. We'll be working with our partners to see how do we re-engineer, how do we look at the lights, is that an immediate adjustment we can make to slow people down, because speed is a factor in most of these. And so even though that we have a decrease of 2.6% over the last 5 years, it's still not enough. I mean, people are dying, and we have to somehow figure out how to get to people to get them to change their behavior. And so we have to seriously look at that and come up with some really great ideas and move forward on that. Solving cases, excuse me, maintain a clearance rate at or above 24% in all Part 1 crimes is the goal. As you can see, we are very close to that. Larceny for autos accounted for 30.9% of all Part 1 crimes in 2021, and only 3.5% of the LFA were cleared. Also attributed to the increase in catalytic converter thefts, which has plagued the nation. In 2012, the clearance rate for shoplift was 81% in 2012, and in 2021 was 56%. As video is having an impact on increased belated reporting. The 5-year clearance rate for homicides is 95%, sexual assault is 13%, robbery 36%, assault is 53%, and all violent crime is 41%. Grow an equitable and inclusive community with a high quality of life. We are committed to meeting the demands of a growing community, as I already spoke about. We use best practices and expertise to guide efforts in recruiting and hiring a diverse workforce that reflects our community. At this point, because of the great work in our recruitment area, we've increased by 78% of people that are applying for Lincoln Police Department, which is a huge jump. The no-shows have reduced by 50%. And so, those are people that said they were going to come and then they didn't, but reducing it by 50% is a really great reflection of who we are. We encourage wide and varied representation on community boards of directors, neighborhood associations, and collaborative participation with groups to open dialogue with various groups that comprise our city. We have identified recruitment and hiring as a critical function in this budget cycle to ensure our staffing meets the expectations and demands of our community. The other great addition is going to be human resources, hiring somebody in regards to recruitment and retention. Having a partner obviously is really great when it comes to what we do in civil service. And we're also committed to the health and safety and well-being of our staff. We've put in a lot of different programs in which I feel that are definitely helping for the mental health, but also, it is about being a family and what are we doing to really create more trust between us, but also with the community. I mean, it goes hand in hand in my mind. Commitment to a safe and growing community, new civilian staff to include communications coordinator, a public information officer, and a grants coordinator. Allows the ability to focus commission staff and resources towards more efficient service delivery. Additional dispatchers, provides the ability to manage the extensive call volume to ensure a quick and effective response from city and county agencies. Continue the efforts of adding police officers for our growing community. LPU contract will increase wages and benefits, maintaining the principles of our community policing philosophy and generalist officer response. Striving to represent the diversity of the community we serve, including unrepresented populations. Partnering with HR, Barb McIntyre, with our shared staff of recruiters on expanded recruitment platforms and efforts. These are all efforts that are ongoing, and a lot of conversations about how do we do it better. Growing our team and supporting the community. Yeah, as you can see, I mean, this is really about what our officers do. Limit the committed for officers to 60% or less. It is what are they doing with their off time in patrol when they're not going to calls for service. You've seen many pictures probably on our social media playing basketball or being involved in other youth kind of projects. It really is impressive that they're using 62% of their time really doing other things that are positive for the community to increase trust, but also being proactive and trying to stop criminal activity, from giving tickets on O Street, the most problematic areas, listening to what their captains are saying in regards to the areas that they need to respond and give tickets. I mean, those are all things that are really important. Tickets are not the solution necessarily. It's about the public education and what people understand. So they also give a lot of warnings in regards to traffic, because sometimes that is just a conversation, and that education hopefully impacts people. Growing our team and supporting the community. As you can see, we have continued to add funding for officers in this budget. We have seen a number of retirements and transfers over the past year and a half. Our focus is on recruiting talented individuals to bring us to our authorized staffing levels. In regards to this, obviously from the very beginning since I've been here, we've had a lot of deep conversations about how do we retain and how do we bring in new talent. Nationally, again, it is a struggle for every department to hire. It's getting better. The 78% that I spoke about is an increase in people interested in our department. And so it is absolutely, for me, a recovery side to this hiring issue, because as we move forward and as we put forward more information about our department and about our city, people are more and more interested in this city. And so our benefits and everything about that do play a role in it. From the pension to really how much they get paid. It is impactful, but it's also what we provide as a department. And I do think that there's many different positive things that we could point to of why people should come in this department. The state has taken also an interest in retention. Unfortunately, it only lasts, it's LB 1241, where it gives bonuses. We only will benefit the first year, but anything will help.
Take it.
We'll take it. But that's also something that new recruits can look at and say, hey, I get a little bit more money in the beginning. And so we're really looking at different creative ways of attracting people. Increasing customer service. I mean, in 2021, the communication center average was about 1,300 calls per day. 53.9 calls per hour, 0.9 call each minute. That is a lot of work. 109,000 emergency 911 calls. In 2021, the average incoming call lasted 135 minutes. Total time spent on calls was 1,063,741 minutes, or 17,729 hours, or 739 days, or 2.02 years. I mean, it's incredible the amount of volume that they take, and they are impacted on staffing, and so they do a tremendous job, and we ask a lot of them. Connecting people to the help they need. Community, continuing investment in peer support programs like REAL, funding to enhance our mental health crisis responses in partnership with other community health professionals. Continued focus and efforts at diverting individuals from criminal justice system, both mental health and as well as substance abuse. Internally, protecting the health and well-being of our staff by providing support training and services that enables them to provide quality services to our community. Mental health services, obviously this is something that we take very seriously, and we have a really great individual that is in charge of that, and it's only one. What I'd like to do, obviously down the road, is as we increase our numbers, those numbers will increase and specifically work on mental health and homelessness. Additional data which continues to assist and guide in our decisions, 12% increase in 2021 compared to 2016 to 2020, 5-year average. Suicide, attempted suicide, mental health, and mental health with EPC. Really it's important for us to look at this and really work this above all. When it comes to partnerships, this is number one. And I will tell you that I've been incredibly impressed by the relationships that we have with organizations, nonprofits, as well as the city, in how we're handling this. I think a lot of the increase is also about, people feel safer to come forward. It used to be people didn't want to talk about it. And now today, I think things have changed in a positive, and that's why sometimes you see the increases. Innovation towards greater success, updating actions, technology, and beyond investments, challenges, updating the records management system, remodel of the Northeast team, increase supervision and support to our staff, attract, recruit, and retain individuals who will represent and serve our community at the highest level, continue addition of hybrid vehicles to our fleet, providing immediate technology access to field units to enhance our provision of service, continue the growth of the Lincoln Police Department, including facilities, staffing, and partnership with the community. I think when you look at innovation, I can honestly say that the Lincoln Police Department is at the forefront of that. Just by brainstorming and thinking of new ways of connecting the community with resources and our partners and nonprofits. We're coming up, and we haven't rolled it out yet, but a way that officers can we empower our officers to get services to individuals that they meet, whether they go into their home and they see that there's a need, we can connect them to services. It's not that they have to ask or we have to ask them, but we'll connect them and it's from there on, it's up to the service provider to really make that relationship. But if we see that need, it really is about empowering our officers. And I remember as a young officer, you go into homes that didn't have food, didn't have furniture. Kids had holes in their shoes. Those are things when we talk about our officers and giving them the ability to take action. This is one of those things that we're gonna do. But people are coming up with new ideas constantly in this department. They know how to address the issues of the city. And I feel I'm very proud of them in that they bring it forward. And so on that one, I get questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Chief Ewens. Questions for the chief?
You know what, Councilman showed I'm going to give the floor to you first.
I was not prepared for that. Thank you very much. Chief Ewing, mine's kind of an easy question. You talked about the 911 calls and how long they last and how many we're receiving.
Mm-hmm.
I had an opportunity to call the non-emergency number this weekend for some assistance. One of my fellow residents of the community needs some help, and your team showed up and did a great job. But is that non-emergency call included in that 911 dispatch number, or is that a separate category?
So 911 is separate from the non-emergency number, but it's the same unit that handles those.
The same people, they're just kind of multitasking, or?
Yes, sometimes. It depends on staffing.
Yeah, he did a two-hand.
My cheerleaders.
Yeah.
I think we as a community don't think about those non-emergency calls, and I'm not sure if they're reflected in your data.
They are reflected in our data, not in this, but
400,000 calls is the number of calls.
overall.
So,
So it does include that.
That was the
Thank you.
clarification I needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was my one. Phone a friend.
You get 3.
I get 3.
At least. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right.
Thank you,
Councilwoman Washington.
Mr. Chair. Chief Ewens, I've got a couple of questions about FTE, just so that it's
Okay.
clear of what's happening. So my math on the fly is not always fantastic, but it looks like you're adding 6 FTE in year 1 and 6 in year 2. But then I couldn't find exactly how it got to 6 in year 1.
Can you repeat that really
It
in the
looks like
radio
you
main?
have,
Sorry.
6 FTE being added in year 1 and 6 in year 2. I'm open to being wrong, because I couldn't quite figure out where the 6 in year 1 were coming from, or where you were making additions.
Phone a friend.
Assistant Chief Jackson.
The first year, we had a grant that came after the budget year started, so that was 2 police officers. We have 1 additional grant position in our victim assistance unit, and then we have the 3 grant positions, not the grant positions, but the PIO, the communications coordinator. So that's the 6 for year 1.
Okay, so it's
And there's
3 have already been grant funded, and
3 are grant funded.
then
Yeah.
the 3 other positions are the communication coordinator,
Grant.
the grants, and the PIO.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. And then in the second year, they're all officers? Or no, dispatch is 1,
There's
5
dispatch
officers?
1 and 5 officers.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilwoman?
No, I think no, actually I do. I would very much like it if you could define clearance rate. Is there a time limit on clearance? Like when you say you have 24% clearance, is it clearance within a year, 6 months? What?
So it has to be within that year,
Okay.
what we're looking at in this. Even in, some cities play with it a little bit. If, let's say we solved the homicide next year, you can choose which year you put that in, but usually you'll put it in the year that it occurred. But yeah, there's no time frame necessarily, but yeah, we try to make it within that year. If it's
And are the city of Lincoln's clearance rates are well within the norm, or we're leading? Or
It's well within the norm. Homicides, I can tell you that we're well above most cities. It's not, clearance rates are kind of tricky. Of course, you want to raise that bar every year and say that we're going to get another 2% clearance or 5% or 10%. We'd love to say that. But right now, I'd say where we are right now is good.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, I have some.
Oh.
Oh, sorry. You thought you were done, didn't you? The budget proposed here seems to address a lot of the concerns that I hear from constituents out in the community.
Yeah.
So I'm very thankful for that. But I wanted to dive into things a little bit more, just on a broad level, because I want constituents to understand how I think this budget is really responding to the feedback that I hear from constituents out on the street every day in terms of not only adding more officers to the force, but also doing what you can to recruit and keep and retain officers too. So I'm excited to hear about the partnership with HR to get that done. Could you just give me another 3-4 sentences about what that program looks like, or maybe it hasn't been fleshed out yet, I don't know, but just to and Barb, I don't know if you want to come up, but if you just want to talk a little bit about, we know it's important to not only fund a position, but to actually staff it too.
Well, I can speak to what my expectation would be.
Okay.
We're doing a great job individually. I mean, obviously the 78% is a big number, since we weren't doing as well previously, and a lot of that was guided by the staff in cutting down the time it takes to get hired. Young people today do not want to take a year, because that was the national average, to get hired with the police department. So they've been able to cut that down. And so I think that's where you see the increases. And that's a frustration when they do speak to people that decided not to come to Lincoln. It was just that. It was going to take too long. They needed a job. They couldn't wait a year. I personally had 3 jobs prior to getting into San Francisco Police Department, because I knew that I needed to feed myself, especially in a city like San Francisco. One was to feed, one was to gas, and one was to pay my rent. And we don't need to do that today. I think expediting the process without missing key portions of what we need to do to make sure that we get the best has been the focus. And so that's increased. In regards to the partnership, I would say that, new ideas. I mean, this is going to be an expert that's going to come forward and be able to help us, whether it be social media, whether it be locations that we need to go as far as job fairs go. Those are all very important aspects to doing this and getting the right people into the police department. We don't want to just take anyone. This is a very difficult job, as you've seen through the years. And so we need the person that has the maturity, the mental part of it, and the ability to actually be a generalist. Generalist is the key part of it. And you have to juggle many balls in order to make it work. And you have to be really efficient, because most people, when you go into a police department, it'll take 5 to 10 years to be able to get into an investigative unit after you promote, because you have to promote first. Here, it's unique because you get to come in and you're an investigator right away, and then you have opportunities to go to other units, wear different hats. I mean, those are things that here, it's very important, and it's easy to tell people, hey, you can do anything you want being in the Lincoln Police Department, not other departments. And so that partnership is key. I don't know why Barb is sitting in the back, but my expectation would really be have somebody as a sounding board that is an expert in this area and really work on retention. If we're missing something, or there's something in addition that we need to do, then we want to do it. I mean, we're really trying to make sure that our officers have the good quality of life, their mental health is the priority, and that they stay for as long as they can, 30 years, 35 years. I mean,
Yeah.
I think when we go through my budget, I will build on everything she said. We're going to talk a lot about how we're restructuring HR to support the need of hiring quality candidates and then retaining them. And how this budget helps support us restructure so we can focus, have a dedicated division for talent acquisition, to not only support the hiring, and how do we get creative, how do we do it differently, how do we speed it up, because speed is a huge issue. How do we also simplify it? We know from an HR perspective, so now I'm stealing some of my thunder here, and I didn't even bring phone of friends.
You can borrow mine.
I can borrow yours. But if you look at the national data, if it takes more than 5 minutes to apply for a job, you have a drop-off rate of anywhere from 60 to 75%. I don't know if you went through our application process, but it's a lot longer than 5 minutes. It's very complex. So we know people are dropping out of that. We don't have a good applicant tracking system that helps us track that drop-off rate. That was one of my first questions I asked when I got here. What does that look like? Our system we're using today, NeoGov, isn't capable of that, which to me, that's like a basic foundation of having an applicant tracking system. So we can see, are we attracting the talent to us? But then we're so complex to try to go through the application process, they're dropping out. But all of that's in what I'm going to talk about next. The other piece she's talking about is that retention, and I'm going to talk about 6 drivers of retention, how we need to, again, create a different model in HR to support that retention piece, create a separate, I'm calling it an employee engagement division that looks at that, right? What are those drivers of retention? How do we focus on it? How do we partner better and serve our internal customers by creating the programs that are designed to help them? Because each area, there needs to be a close partnership there. So you're going to hear me talk about HR business partners today. The business partner, we could call them operation partners, but they really need to be focused on our other departments and how we help serve them by understanding the unique challenges they're facing and creating those innovative solutions together to solve those. Because HR is definitely a big piece of that puzzle. So how do we do a better job of that?
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. We want to make sure that you have the tools at your disposal to attract and retain. And we want to, I should.
You can say we on this
Okay,
one.
we want to make sure you have those tools to attract and retain.
I mean, I will say the city is definitely committed to giving us what we need. We're always, some of it is the training that we give our officers and just showing support. Sometimes that's the difference. A lot of cities, you're just a number and you don't matter. And so in this city, I believe that what officers see, and there's a lot that happened after the protests and losing Mario. That was mentally impactful beyond anyone's imagination for our people. And so they're still recovering from that. You don't just, when you have chaos of the protests, you don't just get that out of your head. It is impactful. What people say to you, throwing gas on you, shooting at you, that is impactful to our people. And it lasts for a long time. And so our job right now is to really look at our officers and ask, and we always push each other, what do they need right now to get them through this? So they don't make other decisions and leave this career. Because they'll get through this, but it's up to us to really provide them the ability to do that, and that's through some additional training, some mental health training, some support, and seeing that they have a future in our department. That those protests were something that happened in the past. Will it happen again? Most likely down the road, but we're going to be prepared. And we're going to prepare them mentally in every way. And so I think that's, this is a great addition, but it is really, I do feel very comfortable about where we are. And we're able to really make things happen.
Other questions for the chief or AC Morrow Jackson? Okay.
I only used 2, by the way.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
Oh, wait.
Boom.
I want to compliment you guys on the segue.
That was beautiful.
It's like we planned it, but we didn't.
Well, then maybe the thanks goes to John.
I think the thanks does go to John. I didn't get the direction from John to bring my HR department with me, so it's just me today. I will do my best to answer the questions and talk about what we're doing from an HR perspective. I want to start with, we have a new HR vision, and it is really we really want to strive to make a difference in the lives of public servants and create environments with equal opportunity for learning, personal growth, where our people thrive, right? So I have this closely held belief that if we take care of our people, they will take care of our community. And so we have to encourage the development of talent and diversity in our employees and be responsive to their needs so they can be responsive to providing great customer service for both our businesses and our residents of Lincoln. So you're going to see that reflected. That's kind of the foundation of why I've changed the mission. Our commitment statement is really going into really going into how we do that and what the different capabilities we need to do that are. So our prior structure, our current structure we live in today, we have employment, risk management, class comp negotiations, benefit, and then the police pension. On the right-hand side, you're really looking at what I'm proposing as a new structure, and I'm calling these really HR divisions or the capabilities we need. The first one, we changed that title slightly. It's labeled here employee relations, but it's really going to be looking at employee engagement and relations. Risk management, we have that today, that one stays. The learning and organizational development is new. Talent acquisition. Today we have that employee relations and that talent acquisition under this bubble we call employment, but we really need to separate those and create some clear focus on what the capabilities under each of those components are we need. It goes to retention and talent acquisition, right? Total rewards. This is where we're wrapping back up that value proposition for our employees. So what is all the value that an employee receives by working for the city? It's their compensation, their benefits, the pension plan, recognition. So how do we really put that team together and create a focus where those things are working in alignment with each other so we have a really rich offering for our employees? And then our HR information systems. We have a lot of HR information systems today, and how do we make sure we're getting the most out of those systems or identifying systems that are not up to where I would expect them to be with capabilities, and what's our plan to go forward to change out those things so we really have the functionality we need to automate and make the most of the resources that are being given to us. So that is the proposed structure, and I think it fits and it's timely because we are really seeing a significant reinvention of work today, and the demand for talent is so tight right now. Our workplaces just looks completely different than it did. Coming out of COVID, we have the rise of hybrid or fully remote working, and we have talent who are looking for different employment experience with people. So it's created this really complex and tough environment that we're working in right now to try to attract and retain talent. I'm full of information, but as a side note, Gartner, if we maintain the number of resignations or quits that we've had for the first half of the year nationally, Gartner's predicting that 40% of people are going to change jobs this year. Now at the city, we're doing better than that. Our retention is better than what we're seeing happening out there on a national level. We're not anywhere near that 40% of our talent leaving us. So that's really positive and good news. It means we're doing a lot of things right already, but there's always room for us to get better. All right. So here's the budget. In this budget, we are adding 3 FTEs. And the specific FTEs that were being added are that Human Resources Information Systems leader. That position is going to have a focus on maintaining our full life cycle of HRIS systems for the Human Resources Department. It'll lead the implementation of new processes to support our operational needs across the organization, seek ways to make our processes simpler, less complex if we can, automate as much work as we can to gain the efficiency that these systems do offer to us, and improve. Really what we're looking at is how do we improve our user experience? So it's one thing to have an HRIS system and have HR using it, but we have everyone in our organization using the system. So what's that user experience and how do we continue to focus on that and improve that? The other one is the creation of that engagement division leader, which will focus on employee engagement and that employee relations. And it's really a plan to look at how do we implement programs, policies, and procedures that focus on productive work environments, support the DE&I position, and deliver an exceptional employee experience when they're working with us. It's really, you're going to hear me start talking about creating an irresistible organization. I really feel like that's the platform or where we need to be as a city to make sure we're retaining our talent. I'm kind of jumping off track here, but we're never going to win this talent retention equation with wages alone, right? Because we are a city government. We're always going to have some constraints. So how do we win it on that irresistible organization and creating experiences here that they stay so they can have them here because they're not going to have them somewhere else. So that's really the crux of this position and adding that in. The other position we're adding is a executive support assistant for the HR department. There is not one to support the leadership team. It results in my time and a lot of our HR management team focusing their time on work that would be better shifted over to an executive support assistant to really free us up to really look at the projects we need to implement, our journey, and the strategies we're trying to focus on. So those are the 3 FTEs that this budget supports us adding to the HR department. And I talked a little bit about the strategies, and I want to kind of talk about kind of my vision of those strategies. We talked about the different functions or capabilities we need to have in HR. And so when I talk about talent acquisition, what do I mean by that? Because this is some new language or new terms I'm using to describe the work that HR should be doing. So when I speak about talent acquisition, it's really looking at how do we create a compelling candidate experience and place top talent or high quality talent into successful and lasting careers here with the city. So how do we engage with them, and even if they didn't get the job the first time they interview with us, they walk away and that experience was such that they're committed to, I didn't get that job, but I'm going to keep applying because I want to work there. We exceeded their expectations and created something different, a different candidate experience than they get with other entities that they apply at. When we talk about the total rewards and creating that team, it's really how do we create first-class rewards that enhance the lives, health, safety, and well-being of our talent that we have here at the city, and create retention so our employees have the knowledge and experience to really serve our community in a high level, in a way that the community deserves to be served by the city. And our organizational development and learning capability, that's really looking at, we hire great talent, but right now what we're seeing is talent scarce. And so a lot of times what we're doing is hiring talent that we know we have to invest in, right? They've got high potential, they're good talent, but we're not getting fully formed people. So we know that learning is becoming a huge cornerstone of what we need to do. So once they enter our organization, they can grow and learn with us. And we're betting on that talent developing into that high performance. And all organizations are doing that. People are looking for not having these perfectly formed people with the knowledge, skills, and abilities to walk in and do the job, but the talent that we know we're going to need to invest in, which creates that really important component of learning and developing people that we need to bring in. That learning and development position was funded in the previous budget cycle, but we didn't get it added to the department. So that, hopefully by Friday, that job ad's going to be coming out. So I'm really excited to get moving down that path and start looking at how do we really bring in these capabilities we need. The employee engagement team, we talked a lot about that, but it's really to look at creating this irresistible organization or continuing our journey down that. So we're creating a ton of pride for the people working here. They feel a lot of pride and satisfaction in being part of this organization. They're going to go above and beyond to serve our customers in the community because their jobs are important and have a lot of meaning to what they do. Information and data, again, I talked a lot about previously, the automation. How do we make the best of the resources that we're being entrusted with? So those are some of the strategies we are looking at. Within those strategies, I wish I could take credit for this chart. This actually comes from Harvard, and it's a fabulous chart that they put out. And really what it looks at is those components about once we attract that talent, then how do we retain it? How do we grow it? How do we develop it? How do we create this irresistible organization, which is what they've coined? And it's really a model that has 6 core drivers that we look at as we develop the initiatives that will be under our strategies to support the organization. And one is meaningful work. We're really fortunate at the city that we have, it's like the cornerstone of what we do is meaningful work, because people want to come to a job and feel like it has a purpose that's bigger than just getting a paycheck. And all our jobs here provide that higher purpose. The work here they do matters. And that's an easy tie-in for us. It's how do we just consistent message back to the employees the meaning of the work they do and how it supports and builds our community and creates Lincoln to be a fabulous place for everyone. Hands-on management. This is one that I think from an HR perspective, I spend the most time thinking about from a program perspective. And when I say management, I really mean management here, because management is about how do we keep the lights on and the doors open. It's the getting the daily work done. And management that invests in their people, shows them that they're valuable, that we care, that they are going to spend time developing the staff. That is, we can never replace that. So how do we really help our managers grow the skill set they need to understand how to identify talent in people, invest in that talent, and help those people grow so they can be wildly successful in our organization. And that's a big part of that also, is just making people feel valued, listened to, and cared about. The more we value and care about our people, it goes a long ways towards that retention, and that is in that immediate relationship with their direct manager. Positive work environment. I could go through all of these, but you kind of get the point. Under each of these strategies, we'll be looking at these 6 core drivers to really figure out how do we tap into this and make sure that when we're looking at these initiatives we're going to be rolling out, these are the cornerstone foundational things that we're including in those as we roll them out. So let's talk about the state of the workforce. I'm sure you guys have all seen this data before, but we're going to spend just a little bit of time on it. I did look this up. Comes from the April statistics from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Right now in the Lincoln metro area, we have about 12,000 open jobs. Unemployed job seekers, we have about 3,500. So there simply in our metro area is not enough talent to fill all the positions and opportunities we have available in our city. Now that's a blessing. That means economically we're doing really, really well. But it goes back to that thing about we do have some critical talent shortages, and we're hiring people with little to no experience, but they seem to have the right raw potential, right? So investing in them and having that robust learning experience so we can develop that talent once we bring them in. I also looked up our labor force and then the participation rate. Our unemployment's running slightly lower than the state as a whole at 1.8 instead of 1.9. But the entire state of Nebraska, good news is we're doing really well economically, but it's creating that shortage of talent. So how did this impact us? And I thought this was some interesting data. There's lots of numbers on this, so I'm going to walk you through it. So job openings from 2020 to 2021 for full-time and part-time staff that we would consider like our regular employees, not seasonal, on-call, or temporaries. Our job postings or open positions went from 386 to 526. So we have a lot more openings than we've been dealing with. Again, we have some higher turnover. We'll get to that slide, but we have a lot more job openings, and that includes in our seasonal and temporary. A lot of that was driven by COVID. We had COVID shot clinics and all that extra seasonal temporary staff we were bringing on for that. So our job openings actually increased 27% for our full-time and part-time, and for our seasonal temp or on-call 48% over 1 year. So those are some big jumps, which is really why we have to start looking at talent acquisition and how do we reinvent it? How do we do it differently than we're doing it today so we can tap into different pipelines of talent? Our applications, at the same time we're seeing the need go up, our applications went down by 10% overall. But we did welcome 241 new teammates for full and part-time, or 627 in that seasonal temp. You see big jumps there. For a total of 868 hires in 1 year. So that's a lot of work. That team is doing a lot of work to get people in and get people hired. And that's really where we need to create a team that's truly focused on the talent acquisition piece of this. We also do a lot of internal promotions where we post the job, but they go through that interviewing process to get that next promotion or transfer, and there was 119 of those that happened in 2021. So we had a 46% increase in the level of hires and talent acquisition and work we were doing for our full and part-time employees. And then our seasonal increase was 34%. when we look at how we reinvent talent acquisition, it's really creating, like I said, proactively tapping into talent and talent pipelines. It includes things like how do we do a better job of community networking, ensuring we're using more social media. As crazy as this sounds, but who are we trying to reach? TikTok videos, recruiting TikTok videos, they're out there. So how do we start looking at doing some of this stuff, right? It's where the world has shifted, and how do we shift with it? Employer referrals is a big piece of that. Our best recruiters are our brand ambassadors at our current employees. How do we encourage them and get those employer referrals in, because they love our job, so they're out there talking about what they experience to work here and be part of this organization. Employment fairs, industry events, all of that. And this is all, when Chief Ewens was up here, it's all things we need to be looking at to make sure we have critical talent for LPD so they can go out and protect the health and safety of our community. So this all ties directly right back in. So the next slide we're looking at is we spend a lot of time bringing that talent in. So I didn't put this in my speaker's notes, but generally when you're looking at hiring someone, minimally you're looking at spending about a third of their salary to actually get that hire conducted when you look at all the steps it takes to recruit and hire and get that new talent onboarding. So we invest heavily to get them in the door, and then we know we're going to be investing more as we develop their skill sets. And if you look at this graph, what this is, it's the tenure of our employees at departure. And you're going to see that 34% of our folks are leaving us before they hit 4 years of service with the city. That represents a huge investment that is walking back out the door after we hire them. So that retention piece it's significant. How do we help retain that new talent we're bringing in? It kind of looks like once we get them to year 5, we kind of have them. So how do we make sure in those first 5 years we're really focusing on their growth, their potential, that they can see what their career trajectory can look like in this organization, and that we're really focusing on creating these wonderful, irresistible organization environments where DE&I is foremost and center as part of that, where they see that we're investing in their learning and growth, and we can retain that talent that we're bringing in the door. The other part of this graph I thought was very interesting, and I had to kind of start breaking this down into 5-year chunks, but how much of our talent has been here for a very short duration of time? And if you look at this, 30% have been with us 3 years or less. And we also know that that's when our talent is most vulnerable to leave us again. So again, it goes to that ensuring that we have managers who are focusing on how do we onboard our talent and create those memorable experiences. So the first 30 days they're with us is an outstanding experience. They're excited about their careers, and we keep that excitement level up. I'm not saying it should drop off after 5 years, but we have, looking at some of this data, identified where we're at risk of losing the talent we're bringing in, which goes back to focusing clearly on some capabilities and restructuring of HR so we can do that. Our generations, this one surprised me when I was looking at this. So retaining workers is the most difficult that it's been in decades, because we've got this accelerated retirement rates that we're seeing. At the same time, we know there's a shortage of talent in public safety, healthcare, engineering, and information technology jobs. So as we're bringing in, we are doing a good job of bringing in talent to backfill. But I think that generation is also looking for a different experience, and part of it is that purpose. We know purpose is very important to them. And when we can tie into how their jobs serve the communities where they live and work, and the purpose of that and how important it is, it's going to help us retain that talent. So how do we consistently message that to them? Market the come to us, but then also consistently affirm the decision to stay, because the work they do matters. I think it's going to help us as we attract the generations coming in to keep them here with us. And then also focusing on, as much as we can, how do we meet the needs with more flexibility or work-life integration? I've talked about this before. It used to be work-life balance. So when I stepped out the doors, my job ended. Jobs aren't like that anymore. Our work life is integrated. So, you know, our work comes home with us and all the fabulous mobile devices we have. And so how do we really look at that work-life integration and help people balance what that looks like in a positive way for them? Our pension, so good news here is it's 80% funded, and we have about 1,200 members on this. It's $300 million, so it's a big benefit that we offer to our police and fire officers. We are, you know, once folks enter our drop plan, and they can enter the drop plan when they hit age 50 with 25 years of service, they usually are staying in that drop plan for about 3 more years or 288 days. And we are seeing more people entering into that drop plan. So just caveat that 80% funding is fabulous. We're going to have to focus on it to keep it there, okay? So as more people enter, our expenses are going up, right? But we're there today, and oh, I was trying to move my speaker's notes down here, but let me just flip to it. The other thing we've done, which is a huge benefit on the recruiting side, and I know we've talked about this in the different city council meetings, but we do have that buyback provision now where if they've been with a different agency, they can buy a portion of their service, anywhere up to 10 years, and they don't have to buy all of it, but whatever portion is affordable to them, which really helps us on the retention side. Our workers' compensation claims, the good news here is that we just had an audit done, and what you see here is a higher frequency or more claims, but those claims are worth smaller amounts. Our dollar value per claim has dropped, and that is a positive shift in the right direction, where we are really focusing on both management and employees, a safety culture, or a culture of safety, where we have safety protocols and learning about how to work safely and all of those things. So showing the claims going up, but the dollar amount per claim going down as a positive move in the right direction for us. So that is all I have. What questions do you have?
Questions for Director? Barb, it seems pretty quiet up here.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Barb, thank you. I had a question, and then I think actually you got to it. I mean, I started to write a question down about tenure and retention, and then the next slide, I think, really got to it. I think, one, this has been a fantastic presentation. I've learned a whole lot. I'm obviously going to have a desire to have a longer conversation with you as I start to integrate some of this information. But I don't have any, I would typically ask people about FTE, and you were very clear about where your FTE additions are. I'm fascinated with the irresistible organization, and on first blush, I am super supportive of your organizational changes in order to really focus in on talent acquisition and carrying the employee engagement piece. So thank you so much. But I'll be in touch.
You bet. I will be happy to have any deeper conversations.
Other questions for Director McIntyre?
Similar to Councilwoman Washington, I need to digest a little bit.
Very good.
All right. Well,
Thank you very much. We
I
appreciate
appreciate
it.
your support for, you know what, it's been a fabulous welcome, and I feel like I'm getting great support in this journey that we're trying to take down in HR, and I know, or up in HR. I know that's in large part to your support, so thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much. At this time, we're scheduled for a short break, 15 minutes, but I don't know that the council necessarily needs 15 minutes. If we took a 5-minute break, would that suffice for us?
I think I could manage 5 minutes.
Would that work? Okay, then we'll keep Director Elliott with her presentation at 10:30. We'll break for 5 minutes. All right. Director Elliott, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Liz Elliott. I'm the Director of Lincoln Transportation and Utilities Department. Thank you for having us here today. As you all know, our department is vital to the growth and success of our community. Our transportation team, utilities team, and transit team are essential to the day-to-day life here in Lincoln. We offer our community members an increased quality of life and great customer service 365 days a year. Everything ultimately that we do is centered around our mission, and that is to provide, responsibly deliver, enhance, and maintain our vital infrastructure. We have about 600 highly skilled and devoted employees throughout our 11 divisions with this mission in mind every day as they go out and work. As you'll see on our FTEs, we are requesting 9 FTEs in the 2-year budget, 8 in the first year and 1 in the second year. There is what would be the 10th there. That is actually in the current year budget and was carried over and reflected in that. So it's actually 9 FTEs total. Most of those are in the utilities division, but there are a couple in transit as well. But we'll talk about those more in detail as we go through the divisions on this. But ultimately with the FTEs, if we do fail to add these FTEs, that means longer response times to water main breaks. That means risking more backups in our wastewater mains. It means risking more potholes and slower transit services. So by strategically programming our budget, we're able to accommodate a modest increase in FTEs, but still balancing and providing enhanced services to our communities. As you know, our operating budget for LTU is primarily funded by non-general funds, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. The biggest changes in our operating budgets are, you will notice that broadband, as Melinda mentioned yesterday, has moved from LTU to IS, so that line item is gone in our budget. And that also impacts transfers, so our transfer line also changes for that as well. And then we do have some other changes in service and other charges. Those basically are the standard increased costs from building rent, interdepartmental charges, those types of things. Those are the biggest changes in our operating budgets over the next 2 years. Unlike most city departments, our LTU funding does not primarily come from general funds. The only departments or divisions that receive general funds are StarTran, our sidewalks, and our stormwater watershed divisions and maintenance there. Primary funding mechanisms for LTU: user fees, state and federal funding. And that's across the board in utilities, transportation, and transit. So today what we will do, we'll go through our budget starting with some very small department-wide projects, then we'll go into transportation, we'll move to utilities, and wrap up with transit. Before we dive into transportation, wanting to just touch most of these numbers on the trends that we're seeing across the department we talked about in our mid-year report. We, like everybody else, are seeing prices go up. The most recent would be our fuel costs over in StarTran, where we're seeing significant changes from January, where it was $2.61 up to $4.56. That was about 2 weeks ago, so there could be a little adjustment on that as well. And then even our CNG, we are seeing increases on that. As we talked about in the past, we're seeing increases for our pipes, for Lincoln on the Move resources, those types of things. So we did take this into consideration as we were developing and presenting our budgets here. We were very strategic in how we programmed our projects, and we're trying to balance that with our higher costs with our efforts to continue to provide growth and services to our community. One of the biggest things and one of the aspects of customer service that we like to provide is just getting information, data, and public engagement out to our community. And one of the ways that we have done that in the last year is that we have created a one-stop shop for the community that lists all of our LTU projects from the past, present, and future. This website was launched in December of 2021. And based on our analytics, I'm excited to say that this page, I think we can declare it a success. And comparing the last 6 months with last year's 6 months, we've seen a 23% increase in page views for our project's webpage. And that went from 34,609 views in December 2020 to May 2021 to 42,559 views in December 2021 to May 2022. So we're averaging now with this new projects page an average of 7,000 views each month. And I think that is just indicative of the initiative that we are really taking to improve our customer service by not only providing information that directly impacts them, but also giving them that full picture view of all of the work that we are doing every day across the entire city. The other public engagement improvement that we have been making the last year or more is more enhanced public engagement. And this is just one example. It's our Lincoln on the Move annual report, where it's an interactive report that shows videos before and after, photographs of the project, material, data, and all of that information right at the fingertips of our residents here in the community. And we're doing additional public engagement, whether it is having interpreters or translation devices at our open houses and other circumstances. We're trying to really enhance that customer service of educating and letting the public know what's going on around town. One thing that we don't talk a lot about in LTU, you usually hear about it yesterday in the IS and finance department, is cybersecurity. LTU, the critical services that we provide here, are dependent upon automated computer systems that control traffic flow, the timing of our lights, the production and treatment of our water and wastewater, and how we schedule our public transit system. The last couple years, unfortunately, we've heard worldwide of hackers hacking into these systems. Whether it was the Dutch hackers who found a way to play with the traffic lights over there, or closer to home, Florida, California, Kansas, all had hackers into the water system, trying to alter how they treat and handle their water systems. Or Honolulu and New York City, who had people hack into their public transit systems. These are systems that we rely on to keep our community safe and our services provided every single day. So one FTE that we are requesting is an LTU cybersecurity specialist. They will be able to focus their attention on our water and wastewater SCADA systems, our traffic networking systems, and our public transit softwares that route and schedule our fixed route riders and our paratransit. So this is a new position. This is a department-wide position that would be funded a third by water, a third by wastewater, and a third by transportation. Again, sorry, all with our traditional funding. It does not come out of general funds revenue on this one.
Okay.
Those are the general department-wide improvements and services that we are providing. Again, it's the one FTE here. I will then turn it over to Thomas, and he can talk a little bit about transportation. But before I turn it over to him, any questions generally? And I'll be back up at the end, so you can save them till the end too if you have. But any
Questions for Director Elliott at this time?
Yes, there was just one item on one of your slides. It said the bar cost markings. And would you just define bar?
Yes. So let's see. Do we have a picture? We might have a picture. So if you think of a crosswalk bar, and there's between 5 and 7 across it, one of those.
Really mean one bar.
Really mean one of those.
Very much.
I had the privilege of spending a morning with our traffic marking team last week, and it was very informative and educational, and it was fascinating to see the work that they do. But they do mean 1 bar on that figure. So it's one of those areas that we're seeing a big increase. This is way more than you need, so I apologize. One of the impacts is we really only have one company in town that does it. And we've reached out, done a significant reach out to regional, Kansas City, Des Moines, Omaha, out west, to see if there's others that could come in and fill in. But they're busy, they're booked, and it's just been difficult to get people here. So that is one of the driving forces as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Elliott, thanks for, as a follow-up on that, so that's when we dig down to the pavement, put something a little heavier there in the crosswalk? That's what we're defining a bar as?
Right, if you see
And
the
what is the
crosswalk
life
one.
expectancy of one of those things?
We were just talking about this the other day, and I want to say it's 5-ish years, but Thomas will know for sure.
So, how about you'll tell me later, and we move on with the.
Okay.
Let's throw the conversation.
Okay.
Perfect.
Other questions? Okay.
All right, thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you. Thomas, I think you're up.
Thank you. Keep us on time.
I'll answer it depends. Depends on how much traffic is rolling over it. We can see ones in heavy, if you think about out here where the traffic turns across a lot, those are probably 2+. If it's something that can be straddled by the wheels and not take a lot of beating, maybe 7. So somewhere in between there.
I was thinking
a lot
more
of times
snowplow.
4 or 5 is the number we would use for that. So
Thank you.
okay. Sure I get into the right spot here. So I'm here to talk to you about the transportation. I'm Thomas Schaefer, Assistant Director of Transportation, and appreciate your time this morning that we can present. With our CIP in transportation, there will be an investment of $44.2 million in the first year of the CIP and $47.1 million in year 2. And the transportation system includes not only street repairs, but street improvements, new construction, and the sidewalk repair program, along with streetlights. Streetlights is also in that number that we did. And that supports hundreds of millions of dollars of private investment across our community and development. The sidewalk number, and we'll have these numbers on another slide for you, is $1.75 million, and that is included in those. So when you subtract that out for the streets alone, the number is $42.6 million in year 1, $45.5 in year 2. 1.57. Okay. I'm just trying to get a little more money, John. Sorry about that. My number, dyslexia this morning apparently. So our transportation team has 5 divisions that we have. We like to think of ourselves as maintaining the system, evaluating the system, building the system, regulating, and operating. And we have 5 divisions, whether that's street maintenance operations, our asset management performance division, the project delivery, which is the CIP projects, development services and right-of-way services that does the permitting parts of it, and then our traffic engineering that does the operating parts of it on there. And we really do think of ourselves as not 5 different areas, but actually a team. I have a graphic that I like to think of as a circle, you know, kind of the life of it, and we've got to all kind of mix and work together to make sure that we're meeting our activities and our responsibilities. So we'll talk a little bit about the operations and maintenance part of it. Probably one of the biggest things that that we do is it's a emergency response organization that helps for the safety of the transportation system, whether that's clearing snow, as you see in our last budget. We have invested in a lot of new pieces of equipment that'll be hitting the streets next winter. I got an opportunity to see some of those getting outfitted and got to sit in one. They wouldn't let me drive it, but they let me sit in it, and we're excited for that. Or it's filling the potholes. That's also a safety thing if you think about it. We'll have another slide here in a second. We don't just be reactionary. But one of the things we're doing is trying to prevent potholes. Prevention is, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and that's never more true in the case of crack sealing. When that's small and we can fill the crack with material and keep the water from getting in there, we're going to prevent those potholes. And we've done a lot. In fact, over the last 5 years, we've increased that production by over 500%. And that bar, I apologize, it's not the biggest, but it shows the pounds of material that we've used over the last 5 years. And you can see that we are just been really getting better and better at that, able to apply more people to that. And we did 2,878 lane blocks of crack sealing in the last fiscal year. So we're optimizing that. That was a change in a budget a couple years ago where we contracted our mowing operations out to the private sector, and then we used our reallocated our forces that we're mowing to doing this crack sealing, and we think that's a great investment to help the community out. We have our traffic engineering group. They do a lot of the community safety and work on enhancing it. Also, they work on increasing not only the safety, but how we flow traffic through the community. And when I talk about traffic, it's not just vehicles, but foot traffic, bike traffic. It's how we move people across this community in different ways. We're going to continue to invest in alternative intersections like the roundabout. They're not only safer, they're cheaper on the long term to maintain and operate, and they provide a lot of opportunities for the community, especially at the price of gas. You're not stopped at a stoplight waiting for somebody to turn. You're able to keep flowing, and that's really good in these times. We're going to continue to do our school zone standards. We have 11 completed. We got 10 in progress for this year, and eventually we'll review all 83 public and private schools throughout Lincoln over the next few years. So that'll be a program we want to keep continuing. One of the other things is we're going to be increasing our safety education. There's kind of three E's of traffic, which is education, enforcement, and engineering. And we want to increase the education as well, because when people know why you're doing things, if they know what the consequences are and why we're doing it. So we've been increasing our visibility at community events and trying to get around, like with the school safety program, getting to those things, working with kids, working with the parents so they understand we're not trying to make your life tough by making you go this direction around the school. Here's the benefit of it. Then they're more likely to follow it. So. Oh, I think I went too far. Sorry. This is the number we were talking about with our CIP, and we have the areas of the CIP that is funding. Preservation, which is preserving what we have. Optimization, which is improving and enhancing what we have. Growth, that's where we're going to build and accommodate for our growing community. We have the sidewalk repair program, and we have the livable neighborhoods, which is helping target areas where we work with different livable neighborhoods. Right now, that number in the CIP had to be cut, and so it's 0 at the moment, but it's still a program we'd like to see funded in future years, so it's still in there. I'm going to talk a little bit about sidewalk, and last year, the number that we had as a base number was 1.22. That has been increased by $350,000 to make that the 1.57 million. Currently, community-wide, we have 4,000 reported repair locations. It's estimated that we need about $10 million to get to all of those. And so this additional funding will help us to get to more places community-wide. Typically, a location's about $2,500. So you can kind of see on a typical remove and replace, $350,000 will help us get to a lot of locations. But we have been looking for other ways that we will be doing to try to get to even more. So one of the things you may have seen is what we call the sawing or grinding program, where instead of having to remove and replace, we're able to, and Benny's showing the picture there, you know, you have your gap and you saw it off and have a nice transition. And we can get to so many more places with that and address the safety in a very good way. So those things are more like 1,000 a location. So you can see we can double where we can get with this 350,000 if that's the route we end up going. But it'll probably be a mixture of things, but we'll certainly get to more locations. I want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about 14th Warlick and Old Cheney. That's been a large project that's been under review for a lot of years. We are hosting a public open house on the 30th. I'd like to invite you to come to that. I want to remind you the goals remain the same. We want to enhance the safety of that location. We want to be able to serve more users through that location. Certainly be cost effective, improve some drainage down there, and improve the multimodal, which is connections for trail users and the pedestrians in the area as well. And that meeting is going to be the 30th. So June 30th, we'll have that meeting. It'll be 5 to 7:30. It's just an open house. There's no formal presentation that day. It'll be down at Lincoln Southwest High out there. Project cost right now is about $29.3 million. It's going to be funded out of our local highway allocation funds that we get from the state for state gas tax mainly, the wheel tax, and impact fees that are collected in that district that haven't already been earmarked. We are hoping to have construction going and completed by 2025, but that'll depend on funding, also depend on how the project costs escalate over the next few years. Talk a little bit about Lincoln on the Move. We have been conservative with our projections over time. And we're going to continue that conservative projections just with the inflation pressures that we're seeing and the recession unknowns. Potentially, we want to be conservative in those, but you can see that we have generally exceeded our projections with our actual collections. That's been good because as costs have gone up, it meant we have not had to cut projects. We've been able to deliver on all the projects because as some of our costs have gone up, so have our collections. So that's been a good thing on there. And that 2021 bar is, we've already exceeded our projection for the year. We're on pace for $16 million on that. But the last 2 months are unknown. So that's why that one's a little bit lower. As we indicated with Lincoln on the Move, we've been trying out and having success with some of our public involvement, and these are a couple of pages and pictures from that annual report. You know, when we first started this program, we talked about $78 million being invested. We think now that number is going to be more like $86.5 million because of those collections coming in higher than we expected back when we made those original. There's some great pictures of our residential programs that we've completed recently here, and you can see the map of where we're working both in the past and where we're working this year. On the left-hand side is some of our existing arterial streets that have been completed. On the right-hand side is, you know, there's a piece of it that's earmarked for growth, and that's some of the growth projects that we've been able to get accomplished and work with private partnerships on that. So year 1, 7 projects. Year 2, 18. Year 3, we're at 17. And so far we have at least 11 identified. We'll be working later this year into the fall on identifying even more projects that we'll be wanting to come back and talk to you about. So our right-of-way group, I just wanted to you know, we build a lot of things, we maintain a lot of things, but we also partner with a lot of private partners to help with the development and growth of the community. You know, in 2021, they worked with and permitted over 2,900 permits there of various types. And that last one of 186 private construction agreements, that's where a developer will want to go in and build the water, the wastewater, the streets ahead of a subdivision or commercial development. There was 186, and the total value of that infrastructure added to the city was $33.1 million just in 2021, and we're on pace to exceed that in 2022 this year. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Thomas? Well, you might have lucked out for right now.
I answered Benny's bar question. I'm good.
Thank you. All right. Donna.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Donna Garden. I'm the Assistant Director of Utilities for Lincoln Transportation Utilities. And I want to say utilities take an awful lot of pride in the work that we do for the city to make sure that we provide those essential infrastructure and services to a growing Lincoln. And we also want to focus that a lot of what we do is public health related as well. You see that with the work we're doing in wastewater and obviously with having water delivered to every home and business here, and that we fuel economic growth going forward. We continue to invest in the future by expanding our capacity and performing treatment upgrades and other capital improvement projects that add to our citizens' quality of life. So let's start with Lincoln Water System. This is a picture of one of our 2 water treatment plants in Ashland. It's our West plant. Parts of this building were built in 1932. And if you go out and to visit this facility, you'll see on the front of it, it says it's called a pump station, Lincoln Pump Station, built in 1932. And you think about our predecessors planning to treat and move water almost 30 miles to their homes in Lincoln. It was such a major undertaking for them. And they did it, and we continue to operate this system today. So we are continuing to look for investments there and continuing to look for ways to keep our system going for those types of terms. LTU invests $33.8 million in water infrastructure in year 1 of this budget and $40.7 million in year 2 for improvements. That includes new lines and treatment facility expansions to support growth and development, meter and main replacements in existing neighborhoods, well field improvements, and preparations to secure a second water source, which fits right in with that 1932 building. We have recovered from the flood. All of our facilities are back up and running. Everything is back in service. And we actually did get some FEMA payments. In fact, between insurance and FEMA, we did recover almost 98% of the dollars that we had to spend on rebuilding our facilities. Just as our forefathers and mothers before us went that 30 miles, we again are looking for a second source to sustain Lincoln for the future. So here's some facts and figures. I always show these every year and just want to talk a little bit about how much water we use and get a little idea of what's going on out there. 12.6 billion gallons of water are used yearly by the city of Lincoln, about 124 gallons per person per day. And I know we have goals to be a lot lower than that, so conservation is very, very important to us, and we want to continue to press that. But it is interesting because we have taken a 34% decrease since the early 1980s. So this is really an amazing feat of conservation that we've included, and we continue to promote conservation practices. Average daily rate is about 35 million gallons per day, and that's only about 3 million gallons per day higher than in 1982. But we did peak out one year in 1974 at 97.5 million gallons per day. We couldn't have sustained that in 1974. Here's our little list of wonderful assets that we have. It continues to grow, and I will tell you that the last time I updated this slide from the last time I gave this presentation, and we added 50 miles of distribution mains to our system. That's between developers and the work that we do on our arterial mains. So in 1 year, I mean, we have grown that much. So we continue to grow and we continue to add assets to this system. It's a very complex system. It takes 60 miles of large pipelines just to get the water from Ashland to our Lincoln city limits. Almost 1,300 miles of pipe within the city carry that water to your homes and are subject to corrosive soils, wide variation in weather. We deal with a lot of main breaks throughout the year. All of these must be maintained and repaired and operational every day of the year. Our customers expect to turn on that tap and see water 100% of the time. And that includes, as we add these assets, we have to be able to go out and exercise them, inspect them, and make sure they continue to work. Because of this, we're adding one utility equipment operator. I guess I get to talk about most of the FTEs in our budget, so we're adding one utility operator to maintain that growing infrastructure. Particularly, this person would be doing valve and hydrant maintenance and inspection. And I do want to note here that we have the number of our valves and hydrants have grown 35% since last adding a team member in 2004. It's been a long time since we've added anybody to the crew that actually does the work on our assets out there. According to the American Water Works Association, the average number of individuals in the U.S. working on inspection and maintenance of water distribution assets is 3.5 people per 100 miles of main. Lincoln Water System has only 2 people per 100 miles of main. And less inspection and maintenance of those assets lead to more failures of critical assets. The last thing anyone wants is to try to turn on a fire hydrant outside a fire on your burning house and not have it work. And that's what our folks ensure that continues to happen, that we have working hydrants out there. We're also asking for one additional FTE for environmental lab specialists too, as this is a very, very popular subject in the water world right now, the revised lead and copper rule that has come out. This little heat map that I'm showing here, it was developed from our tap records that we have that shows where the kind of areas are that have a lot of lead service line. Up to 5,600 lines are known to contain lead in some fashion. These are the service lines that lead to your house. They are homeowner owned, but because of the new rules, lead and copper, the utility is responsible for making sure that our citizens are safe from lead. Another 3,200 on top of that 5,600 may have had pieces constructed of lead and may have galvanized pipe, which also harbors lead that could be released. And we actually have about 10,000 services out there that we don't have a clue what the material is that they're made of. And under EPA's revised lead and copper rule, those are considered to be potentially lead service lines, and we must make sure that we understand what our inventory is. We have approximately 2 years to verify that inventory by October of 2024. And we also have to add additional testing. In fact, it's a different type of testing and verification and analysis of our lead that comes in our water going to people's homes. This individual will provide needed support for all of these things, meeting our regulatory requirements and keeping our citizens safe from lead. And I want to remind everyone, our water coming from our well field does not contain lead. This is lead that is picked up in the service lines that go to individuals' houses. Those are the 2 FTEs we're asking for in the water utility, and I'll get back now to the capital improvement program. We have a very large and aggressive capital improvement program for the 6-year period. It's $239 million. And we need all of this in order to keep that system functioning smoothly and to look forward to efficient and compliant growth. We spend half of our revenue acquired each year on capital improvements, and this is only from rate revenues. It comes from nowhere else. We set rates with the future in mind, and that's why we always look at the 6-year CIP to see what our capital needs are for that longer period of time. All CIP is in accordance with our master plan, which lays out when we need improvements, when we need capacity increases, how development should occur. And we will probably require bond or loan or grant dollars to achieve this budget for our CIP. The lead service line replacement program may get some accelerated help with the SRF program, which is distributing the bipartisan infrastructure funds. Some of that is being offered with loan forgiveness. Right now, the draft intended use plan for the SRF includes approximately between 46 and 58% loan forgiveness for the city of Lincoln. This is the first time and only time that SRF has ever provided loan forgiveness or grants for a city of our size in Nebraska. We also have the opportunity to apply for ARPA funding, which was approved by legislature this year. That is funded through the NDNR. And those funds are not actually included in the CIP. They may enhance it and actually provide additional funding for our program. These dollars that we are investing in the CIP will provide a number of things: a continued main replacement of 7 miles per year. This will increase to 8 miles per year in 24-25, and that is keeping our water main breaks down. We are managing about 100 per year, which is a kind of a manageable number right now. But the 7 miles that we're actually putting in have gone from our last budget of $10.6 million per year is going up to about $12 million per year in the next 2 fiscal years. Water quality in the distribution system, we're ensuring quality as our system grows. As that water ages as it comes to the system, goes through all of that piping. Obviously, as the city grows to the south and to the west, the water gets older as it gets down there. So we have to ensure that we have proper chloroamine in our system to make sure disinfection stays within in the water. And we have some in our, this is part of our CIP for this program. Lead service line replacement, we have had programmed lead service line replacement associated with our main replacement. That is what is in our CIP right now. As we replace mains, we replace lead service lines. We may have to come before you again to say, we have money from the SRF and from loan forgiveness for that will actually accelerate that program going forward. But right now, this is just part of our normal program and main replacement. And let's see, I think that's about it for this. And of course, we obviously continue our second source of water planning and feasibility. About $2 million a year go into that. Those ARPA funds I mentioned before will also supplant that, but that is not included in the CIP right now. And with all the utilities, I say this, and I'll go over the other slides that follow this quickly. When it comes to rate setting, all of our operating, debt service, capital improvements all come from rate revenues and impact fees. We did obviously get some insurance and FEMA dollars for the mitigation for the flood event, so that is additional revenues that we received. And of course, we have additional opportunities going forward for ARPA and SRF funding. That is not included in this current budget yet. We'll have to come before you to have those approved. Lincoln Water System maintains strong bond ratings. We only do revenue bonds. These are not general obligation bonds, so we have to maintain our books so that we are a strong credit-worthy revenue enterprise fund. And we try to do that by keeping our debt service ratio over 2 and 180 days cash on hand. So we're asking for a modest increase, as with all the utilities this year, of 5% for water. These will raise the cost of a monthly household of 4 by $1.64 per month in year 1, and additional $1.72 per month in year 2. And just to compare to what other utilities do around the country, I always look at our American Water Association rate surveys, and this is the water rates that we compare to. I kind of looked at local towns to take a look at how we compare. Obviously, our water rates are very economical by comparison to many of our other neighbors. And these are for both the 2 green bars are for the 2 fiscal years. And you see I have also Omaha right next to it. I also have the average of the U.S. in the red bar out to the right. Moving on to the Lincoln wastewater system, besides drinking water, Lincoln Utilities also have facilities to recover resources from our water that goes down the drain. We hate to say it's cleaning up the water. We are actually recovering the resources from it. We also invest money here, $19.4 million in wastewater infrastructure in year 1 and $23.4 million in year 2 for projects including sewer main repair and replacement in existing neighborhoods, sewer main extensions, and construction to support new homes and businesses. We also have an additional capacity improvement project at Teresa Street Water Resource Recovery Facility. That is also to support a growing community. Can't add more pipes if we don't have the treatment capacity to treat the water. Lincoln has 2 water resource recovery facilities. One, Teresa Street is our largest one. It handles the whole Salt Creek watershed area. And then we have Northeast, which is on the Stevens Creek side. And these are no longer just treating wastewater. They also recover energy, renewable natural gas, provide value nutrient-rich biosolids to local ag producers, and promise to recover many other valuable resources like nitrogen and phosphorus in the future. But above all, these facilities are to protect public health and the environment. We're adding a 2-person team to our wastewater collection crews, and I've talked about these folks in the past. These are our teams that go out and actually clean the sanitary sewer using our jet systems that we have. They do videoing of our sanitary sewer. In fact, our jet crews get around to every part of the city within about 6 years. So that's a lot of pipe to cover. We're adding an additional one just because of this little graph that I'm showing here right now. You can see that back in 2012, we were up to about 21, 22 FTEs, but our number of assets and pipe miles that we had were considerably lower than they are today. So we are asking for one more crew to be able to keep up with it. Because this is one area where you do not want to wait to have a problem. Adding another maintenance crew for our collection systems helps keep everyone free from a devastating backup caused by a main blockage. We're also continuing to inspect our mains using our video equipment and allowing us to rate main health and prioritize future replacements and rehab. And then the other area that we've seen growing is the number of liquid waste carrying trucks coming to our Teresa Street Water Resource Recovery Facility. We continue to see these grow in number every day, and they come to our to our liquid waste receiving station. And in fact, our lab must test the loads and track important information, where the material comes from, whether it's suitable for us to be able to process it, if it's a special waste of some type that needs to be recorded. And in doing all of that testing and everything, it takes about 30 minutes per customer. We serve enough customers at our Teresa Street Water Resource Recovery Facility to consume 7.6 hours per day. And our lab technicians can no longer provide this service and do the thousands of wastewater tests that they have to do to meet our compliance with our permitting and discharge for NPDES permits. The environmental compliance technician will provide that service and keep things running smoothly at our facilities. This is an active process, an improvement project for us, where we have found a way to increase our teammates' efficiency and provide better customer service to the people that use the facility. The total capital improvement program for the 6-year period invests $139 million in our wastewater system. All of our projects here too are in accordance with our master plan. We will require a bond or loan or grant dollars to achieve. An interesting topic here is that the bipartisan infrastructure bill does not provide any grants or loan forgiveness for wastewater for infrastructure development here. It all becomes as a loan, not as anything else. There is a small amount available for emerging contaminants, but that would be for things like PFAS and things that we aren't regulated on yet. But in order just to meet our capacity growth, infrastructure improvements, and maintenance, would have to be in the form of a loan. I want to talk a little bit more about that big capacity improvement project. It's about a $29.6 million investment in our Teresa Street facility. This project is basically for needed capacity improvements at our large facility. The facility treats almost 90% of the wastewater in Lincoln. So it's very much swayed to the Salt Creek is the biggest basin we have. So most of our wastewater flows through the Salt Creek Basin. And the project includes 2 new aeration basins and 2 new clarifiers, and it's the lowest cost per gallon of processing in the different types of scenarios we looked at. Not only does the project add 18 million gallons a day of capacity, but it provides necessary infrastructure to continue to meet more stringent regulations for protection of the environment. That would be more stringent permit limits on our permit. So this actually increases the capacity of Teresa Street from 27 million gallons per day to 45 million gallons per day at a cost of $29.6 million, or $1.66 per gallon increased. And just to say, well, where are we and why do we need this? We are currently at 97% capacity at Teresa Street. This project will take 3 years to build. So we are ready to move forward with this. We have not hired yet the company for the design of this project, but we are moving forward with this project. Maintain a strong wastewater system that provides service, and obviously doing it now avoids those costs in the future. There is an opportunity to possibly do only half, do one aeration basin and one clarifier, but that would only get us a 7-year life before we'd have to do it again, and the actual costs associated with this increase would be quite considerably higher. And I do have more data on that if any of you'd like to see that. Again, I'm going to go through this real quick. All of our costs here come from a rate revenue. We do sell biogas now, so actually those natural gas prices going up for us is actually a good thing on the wastewater side. We also do produce biosolids revenues and biogas. That is continuing and doing very well for us right now. Again, we keep a 2.0 debt service cover ratio and 180 days cash on hand, but in wastewater we're asking for 6%. We do need some additional funding here for additional growth projects, and 6% is helping us get there. This Teresa Street project obviously is a big one for us. We are going to take a bond for this project for the capacity increase, but the 6% will help us with future capital improvements. The average monthly household cost is $1.50 per month for a household, and an additional $1.76 per month in the next following fiscal year. And I guess I wanted this graph to be very apparent where we are. Wastewater rates in Lincoln are very, very low. And if you look at the other towns and cities that are associated here, we are on the bottom. We have been there for a number of years. So hopefully the 6% is a modest increase request for this revenue fund. Solid waste operations, 300,000 tons go through Bluff Road landfill every year. That's our days when we have 400 vehicles at the gatehouse, one about every 90 seconds. We also have a 48th Street construction demolition waste. We have about 100,000 tons per year, and a transfer station there for folks to bring in household waste. We do also have a household hazardous waste facility on site at 48th Street. And we have our recycle collection site. We are approximately 7,000 tons per year of recyclables that we bring in, and we fund other waste diversion programs with our solid waste enterprise fund. We made some big improvements to our customer recycle collection sites, and I know you've all heard a lot about these sites over the last few years. We used to operate 19 sites in the city that had all manner of bin sizes, requiring specialized trucks to transport each of the bins. And at that time, the city didn't own any of the bins. We made a determined effort to make that service to our community more efficient. We decided to systematically purchase bins of one size and reduce the number of sites. But improving the quality and size of our recycle collection sites, this effort also included surveillance to reduce illegal dumping, which has worked very, very well for us and has reduced that cost as well in terms of cleanup for those sites. As a result of this effort, we've avoided about $2.1 million in collection costs. That was the estimated cost of what it would take to do the entire collection site program as it was before we made these improvements. We are now less than $1 million a year for collection on those sites, and we're very happy about seeing those improvements. And we also had a number, and as a result of it, the savings, and it would only have come about if we made this change to be able to provide the bins, make those uniform size bins, and reduce the number of sites. And we've been still very successful in terms of the amount of recyclables that we're receiving. Total capital improvement program for solid waste is much smaller than the other two utilities at $33.9 for the 6-year period, $5 million in capital improvements for fiscal year 22-23 and $3 million in fiscal year 23-24. We're going to do some final cover on areas that have been completed and filled at Bluff Road, and we continue to grow our landfill gas collection and control system. And that brings me to, if you look at your capital improvement program, you'll see a very large project in the first year. It's about $30 million. It is not funded by rates and was not included in our rate setting model because we actually hope to issue a formal RFP later this year to seek a proposal for a public-private partnership for utilization of that landfill gas. We recently sent out a request for letters of interest, and it brought in 21 interested parties. So we think we will be successful in having that go forward. We put the $30 million appropriation in there to allow us to move forward with that project, but rates have not been set based upon using that included in our model. So again, 5% increase for solid waste on both the occupation tax and the landfill fee. That increases the monthly household cost by about $0.75 per month per household of 4, and another 80 cents a month for a household of 4 in the next fiscal year. Actual cost to the customer may be different because, of course, that cost is transferred through your collections or your garbage hauler in your neighborhood. Covers increases in costs, in operating costs and capital improvement. And this is our local Nebraska. I think we've got mostly all Nebraska. We may have one other one from outside of the state, but these are our Nebraska landfills and where we stack up with regard to our tipping fee, basically right in the middle with regard to our tipping fee. Landfill fee plus occupation tax is included here and for both fiscal years. And finally, just a brief mention on watershed management. Obviously, this is a picture of Antelope Creek. It's truly an example of a project that provides flood resiliency and took hundreds of structures out of the floodplain. We're working towards this with our current budget, continuing our efforts at Dead Man's Run, and I know you're all excited to see something happening out there. I promise you it will occur, and we'll hopefully have a very similar effect with the Dead Man's Run project. Our watershed management, there is the portion of the budget that is general funded, and it addresses some of the work that we do as watershed management, which includes some very important pieces. We do drainage reviews of development plans. We participate in the community rating system with FEMA, which we've done a very good job of maintaining that reduced flood insurance cost for all of our citizens that have to have flood insurance. Watershed master planning and implementation. We are just completing putting together all of the master plans into a grand master plan for Lincoln for watershed, which will be able to provide projects for future bond issues. We do floodplain management, and of course we have to meet our requirements of our municipal separate storm sewer system permit, which is always, MS4 sounds so much better. And it has a lot of different things that have to be incorporated in that we have to keep track of, that we have to do inspections on, that we have to do testing and other things. Very simply, we're still working on the bond that was previously issued. That was a general obligation bond. It was primarily for funding the Dead Man's Run project, and that is underway and moving forward. And when we get a final schedule for that, we'll probably be looking to start working on a next general obligation bond in order to start addressing some of those projects that are in that complete master plan. And with that, any questions?
Questions for Donna? No? Donna, I do have a couple of questions, and you had mentioned it briefly. The capacity improvement project for wastewater, you had mentioned very briefly in the presentation about the possibility of splitting that improvement into two pieces. Could you give me just a ballpark estimate as to what, because I think that your presentation stated 29 million and change for the entire project in one phase. Could you give me a ballpark estimate if we were to divide it out into two phasing projects, what that number may look like in totality then?
So yes, we can do that. I mean, I think we could 20.5 million to do the two basins, or the one aeration basin, one clarifier, basically half the project.
Okay.
Then of course there's the additional mobilization costs, we have to go through a permitting process with the Army Corps of Engineer. There's a number of things that happen, and actually doing that project again, a very similar project in the future, would be probably very similar cost, about $20.5 million. So we're actually saving some considerable amounts of money to do the two of them together now, or in the next 3 years. I'm sorry.
Sure. And the reason I ask, of course, is because it's a big improvement. It's a hefty improvement in terms of dollars and cents, but also want those who are listening to recognize that, you know, the savings of doing it all at once could really benefit us greatly.
Very much.
So, and then also, Donna, could you also speak to the funding mechanisms, the funding mechanism for that improvement, and the dollars that are paying for that improvement, and how it may impact other services or that the waste that is currently being provided via wastewater?
Excellent question. Obviously, rate revenues pay for everything that we do, but we utilize those rate revenues to pay on debt as well. So what we are planning to do is to actually try to go out and obtain a revenue bond for approximately $35 million to cover the cost of that large capital project, and maybe some other capital improvements that we can make, so that we can maintain those modest rate revenue increase or rate increases that we've talked about. That is about the maximum that utility, that enterprise fund, can handle and still maintain those two areas that we talked about, the two kind of goalposts that we have, the debt ratios of 2 and the 180 days cash on hand. Excuse me. Those are what our credit agencies look at very carefully and will rate us on, and we are separate from the city in terms of how our ratings get adjusted. They don't look at the full faith and credit of the city. They look at how the enterprise fund is run and operated. So we want to make sure that we don't have excessively high interest rates on a revenue bond, and that's what we're doing in the near future, and that's what will cover the cost of the construction.
Okay, and then are there impacts, Donna, the dollars that are being used to pay that debt over time? Could you speak a little bit to what impacts moving those? Is the rate increase solely going towards paying for the bond, or is there a little bit of dollars that are being used to also pay back that debt over time that would be taken out of what would be improvement budgets or what have you that we would traditionally think of going forward?
So obviously rate increases compound over time, and we maintain those, and that obviously those additional amounts will go to debt service, and it will go to our capital improvement program as it gets, we're looking at a fairly large capital improvement over the next 6 years. I can provide you some additional details maybe a little bit later. I guess that's my instructions for providing specific numbers. But so the rate increases just continue to provide us with that benefit going forward.
Yeah. No, this is a broad overview.
Okay.
So thank you very much. Other questions for Donna before we move on? Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Donna.
Right. Thank you.
All right, and that brings us to StarTran and our public transit system. So, we have a lot going on within our transit system, and we'll cover kind of where we're at now and some of where we're going here. Ultimately, our StarTran program continues to connect the Lincoln community to new opportunities and essential needs throughout by providing greater transportation choices. We want to make sure that we're keeping our services economical. We want to make sure that we are providing the improvements and the enhancements that our customers are asking for. And we believe that our budget proposal accomplishes both of those goals. Obviously, we don't know where the gas prices are going. That is something that we believe will ultimately impact our ridership here. Right now, we're starting to see the impact, but the longer it goes, the more we'll see how that is improving. Our top priorities first, this really isn't a budget impact here, it's just kind of where we're at. We need to fill our existing operator vacancies. We are still 15 operators down. That means we are still on reduced routes on 5 of our routes. And I know that has been a significant challenge for our community and our riders. We realize that we're doing all of the efforts that we can. It's great to have Director McIntyre on board and trying to find some new ways to find and fill those vacancies. Our traditional kind of normal budget always includes bus stop improvements, and that includes shelters, benches, signage, ADA ramps. We do have that built into this budget proposal as well. The other significant part of our budget proposal are 14 replacement buses, and that will include 3 electric and 11 CNG buses. And then we do have some additional system security and software updates to make sure. We had a big shift from 3G, now we're to 5G, and we're in the process of updating routers and our software systems on that. We do also, with, as everything else, vehicles are getting larger, and our garages built in the 1950s and 60s, just like with fleet on our street side, we're seeing that on our bus side as well, where our buses are getting taller, and with CNG and electric, our fuel cells are on top. And so with that, our bays need to go up and be taller so we can drive into the bays and do that. So that's it's not really a garage expansion, it's just the height expansion of our bays that we need to implement. Obviously, the equipment updates and the vehicle needs that we have there. The vehicle needs primarily fall within the paratransit services. We are adding 7 new vehicles on our paratransit side, and those are the vehicles or the cutaway buses that you see, the smaller vehicles rather than the large buses. We do also have 15 replacement paratransit vehicles as well in this budget for a total of 22 vehicles. The growth that we are seeing in the transit side really is on the paratransit. Our fixed routes are staying about the same, but the growth is in the paratransit. What we've done during the pandemic is we have shifted 2 fixed route operators over to our paratransit system so we can handle the increase in riders there. It worked out okay even with the vacancies that we have, and that was one of the impetus for the route modifications on those 5 routes. What we have built into this is an additional 2 drivers. That way we can shift those 2 drivers back to the fixed route, but yet still continue to provide the paratransit services at our current rate. So that's 2 additional FTEs in StarTran is for our paratransit operators. We also, through the Transit Development Plan, which many of you have seen or participated in, there were a number of recommendations and preferences by our riders, and a couple of those modified routes 40 and 53. Those are not budget increases, those just maintain at the current budget. That will just improve timeliness of the service on those routes. Those are 2 of the routes that experience time delays, and we're wanting to improve that. There are some additional enhancements to Route 40 and Kawasaki route. These do have minor budgetary impacts. One would be adding an additional booster on Route 40 for school, and then the other route improvement that we're looking at is adding a Kawasaki Express route first thing in the morning. It's just 1 route from Golds to Kawasaki, and that would be it. So minimal costs. It's something we think we would be able to absorb in the proposed budget that we have for StarTran. Rates. That's the ultimate question, and this was the ultimate question that we submitted to our riders and the public through our Transit Development Plan. This graph shows you we had the fixed route individuals, and then we also had our paratransit. So on the left is our fixed route. As you can see, it's almost evenly divided. Would you rather maintain fare free, or would you want service enhancements? And it's almost equally divided. We're 50%, a little over 50, I think it's 55% of fixed route riders said maintain fare free. 45 said make service enhancements. But you can see on our paratransit that actually shifted, and our maintain fare free is only 33%. So in total, it's a pretty even split on where they fell between maintain fare free or charge fares but enhanced services. So what we did was we needed to evaluate what level of fares provides the greatest benefit to our system and our customers. Because it's really important, we felt, to find a balance that will continue to benefit our riders and also offer the city the opportunity to run a healthy and thriving transit system. Ultimately, the question is, what fare rates provide that greatest benefit? So to answer that, we conducted a fare analysis. And what we ultimately decided is doing a modified fare serves the best interest of the system and our customers as a whole. Pre-pandemic, we were charging $1.75 for fixed route ride. A single ride was $1.75. Our paratransit, according to the FTA, can be no more than double what our fixed route is. So pre-pandemic, it was $3.50. Our trolley for everyone was 25 cents. What we are proposing is a modified reduced rate going from $1.75 down to $1.25 for a single fixed route ride. That there reduces paratransit to $2.50 for a single ride. Pre-pandemic, we did not have a day pass. This is something that was recommended not only by our consultants for the TDP, but was also heard by our customers. This is a $2.50 per day pass. They can ride as many times as they want, wherever they want throughout the city. It would encourage new transit riders to test out the system for a very minimal cost, but also encourage visitors so they can keep their cars parked at the hotel, hop on the bus, go anywhere they want for $2.50 per day. We do still maintain a 31-day pass for both fixed route and paratransit. And doing the rate analysis, the TDP said if you reduce your rates, you can keep your pass, your 31-day passes the same, and there would be no change in that. So it would be $17 for the fixed route and $34, again, that double for the paratransit. But we do also offer a low economic reduced fare, and that would be $8 for a 31-day fixed route pass and $16 for a 31-day paratransit pass. This proposed fare modification does put us in line with our peer cities, Fargo, Lansing, Lexington, Little Rock, and Missoula, Montana. And these do, we believe, will ultimately increase our ridership, about 18,000 riders per year compared to 2019 ridership. We do think that this will have a minimal impact to our budgets. I have on here 48,000 to 100,000. Once we implement the fares, we do expect to have a reduction at first in our ridership, so the cost will be a little bit higher, but we do believe that will grow and, like I said, eventually increase to 18,000 more riders than what we saw. I shouldn't say riders, more trips than what we saw in 2019 pre-pandemic. So we think in the beginning it'll be about $100,000 budget impact, but our hope is that it will slowly reduce as riders gain to about a $48,000 impact compared to our current budget. Sorry, that was probably a really poor way of explaining that. But ultimately, this plan does lower fares for riders across the board and creates that day pass that I talked about that would encourage more people to experiment, try it out, hopefully find that it works well, and we'll streamline the fares process for everyone, and then ultimately increases the efficiency and convenience for riders while still enhancing the services that we can provide them. We believe that by doing this modified rate, it does offer the economic benefits that we want for our riders, but also improving our system as a whole and are giving the riders the system improvements that they're asking for. And it allows us to build that strong foundation and hopefully down the road be able to continue to make large improvements such as not collecting fares in the future. With that, any questions?
Questions for Liz, Director Elliott? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Elliott, I do have a couple of questions regarding transit. I know that you were comparing revenue and ridership from your proposed budget to going back before pandemic.
Right.
And I'm just curious, can you tell us what the numbers are if we just look at the pandemic fare free? How much ridership will we drop off from the fare free to, a small fare?
Right. It's really hard to say with any certainty, and obviously with the gas prices, that also throws in another uncertainty of where we're at. There was one estimate that we could see a drop off of about 30 to 40%. But again, that was pre-gas prices rising and other situations. So that's the best guess. And again, it's one of those that is, every community uses public transit a little different. And the communities where they were seeing the 40% drop-offs were more of, I don't know if recreational is the right way to use it, but they did make a number of comments that ridership here in Lincoln rebounded much faster than other places. And we believe that's because our community really embraces it and wants to use it as their primary mode, not just recreational, not just here and there. And so there's some indication, Mike's out this week, Mike's belief on this is that Lincoln's different than the places they're looking at, Missoula, Montana, those types of places. And so we don't necessarily believe that we would drop off that much, but 30% could be a pretty reasonable estimate.
Yeah, I think I'd like a little bit more discussion on that as we move forward through this process. I think you probably know that we've been approached by a constituent who represents a number of people on this topic.
Absolutely, and this is one that is going to go in front of the StarTran Advisory Board on the 28th or 29th, the last Thursday of the month. So that will also go in front of the advisory board, and we'll have some additional information and talk primarily about this proposal.
Other questions for Director Elliott? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Elliott. I've got a couple of fair questions. I like the fair analysis you did, where it was a kind of nice play on words. First off, transfers now. If I get on a bus and pay the $175 during normal times, pre-pandemic, and I get a transfer, there's no additional cost. But how many transfers do I get out of that?
Typically, in most cases, it's one transfer.
So I can take two buses for the $175. With a day pass, I can do that all day long.
Right, as many buses and as many transfers.
Day pass.
That is correct.
And the 31 day is currently in pre-pandemic $17 or $50.
It is currently $17 or $34 for paratransit.
Okay, $34 for paratransit. $17 for the regular, which is 55 cents a day.
Roughly.
And if we go to the $8, that'll be 26 cents a day?
The $8 is the reduced fare one that people can apply for, and if they qualify, would get the $8 a day one.
Thank you for clearing that up. I thought that was...
Right. The 31-day pass...
Apples. They're not really apples and apples.
They're not. The 31-day pass is... The proposal is to remain exactly the same from pre-pandemic through. That won't change at all. And we already... pre-pandemic or currently offer that reduced fare for those that qualify.
Right.
That already exists.
Thank you. That was a little confusing me. I appreciate you taking a moment to clear that up for me.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Mr. Chair, I'm done.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just have one more. Thank you, Councilman Show, because it's helpful. So when an LPS student uses StarTran to get to school, do they also pay the 17 or the 8 for the month, or do they pay something?
No, that would be the same regardless of the rider. It would be the same charge, so 17 unless they get the reduced fare.
Other questions? I do have one question.
Yes.
I was interested to see if in your presentation, other departments or other aspects of LTU have showed us charts that says, oh, wastewater costs this much, garbage costs this much, in comparisons to peer cities. Could you also do that potentially, or do you have the information regarding peer cities in terms of transit cost as well?
Absolutely, we can get that, and we will. I think that's a great idea. We
just because when I was eating my Cheerios this morning and looking online at other cities, $17 doesn't seem like a whole heck of a lot in comparison. But but you do this every day, not me. So
no, we will get that created, and we will provide that to you.
Okay, thank you, Liz.
No, thank you,
Director Elliott. Okay, thank you.
Have a good day.
Appreciate it. You too. I think we're moving on to Director Lopez. A little late. We apologize.
Thank you, LTU.
Good morning, or almost afternoon. Thank you. Anxious to be here to share about our health department. I'm going to move forward here. You know, our mission is really to promote and protect the public's health, as you've heard very frequently over the last few years. And doing that involves monitoring our community's health, our air, water, safe food, and offering health services access and supporting our vulnerable populations, as we've done very highlighted during the pandemic, with those who aren't able to get out of their homes, with those who may have language barriers, with those who have difficulty accessing transportation, and so on. And also preventing infectious disease and managing outbreaks. And I want to emphasize, you know, a lot of the work we do is really focused on the prevention of things happening that are going to really result in an impact on our community members. We provide these childhood vaccines and flu vaccine. We also have a large program of providing flu vaccine for our workers for both the city and the county, so that they are available to carry out the important duties that are required to keep our infrastructure running smoothly. We provided over 10,000 of those vaccines last year, and last night we were at Everett providing vaccine for childhood vaccines. You probably heard nationally, many children have gotten behind on that. So we're working closely with our school community and our cultural centers to be able to provide those. Another area we're always doing is monitoring disease, activity, and risks through surveillance. I think people don't realize that we're doing that all the time. We have some sites that we monitor frequently to see if we're seeing changes that are happening. We're also looking at if we start having more reports of flu-like illness or gastrointestinal disease. A lot of times that's how we identify a norovirus outbreak, or salmonella, or E. coli that's just starting, and that allows us to really get in and work with that area where it's usually an outbreak situation and get it controlled. Another large area that we work in with is the sexually transmitted infections. And we have a particular concern about chlamydia. We're not different than the rest of the state. Omaha and Lincoln both have higher numbers of chlamydia. And why is that a big concern? That's a big concern, especially for women of the childbearing age and who might get pregnant. So we've been updating and doing some new best practices, and we're going to be implementing what's called expedited partner therapy. So we're able to have people reach out and have their partner treated at the same time that they're being treated. And that's one way. We're also enhancing some of the way we give results and following up on every person that doesn't get their results, and going out if that means we have to go. I even actually did some of this back in the day, I remember going down. I could tell you a lot about some of the living quarters above the bars downtown. So there's a lot that is involved when we call investigative work. So we really want to focus on getting this chlamydia rate down. So, I'm very proud of the work that our community has done. It's not just our health department, but it's our health team and our community working together, providing over, and this is a real slide from June 7th from the dashboard, over 430,000 vaccines. Right now we have about probably 67.8 or 68.7% of our total population has had their primary series. We're also working very, very aggressively to get people to get at least their first booster, and those that need a second to get it, because it really makes a difference. In addition to that, it's easy to talk about COVID. People are very familiar with that. But there's a lot of other responses we do. So what you see how we responded in COVID is how we respond on that same scale, but not on that same scale. But all those elements are there in any response we have in the community. And part of it that you may not be familiar about is our direct observation therapy. It's called DOT, not the same as the transit license, but direct observation therapy, which is offered in specific situations to prevent TB that's antibiotic resistant in the community. We actually have a nurse that works one-on-one with these families and makes sure their medication gets administered. We've also had E. coli outbreaks, norovirus outbreaks during the pandemic, and surprisingly, we've also, maybe to some, we're very aware of monkeypox. So if we've done surveillance for that in our community and are following along with that, and I'm happy to say at this point, we haven't had any diagnosis of monkeypox, but even right here in Nebraska, we have things happening. And then we want to protect our health and safety of our families and communities, and we do that again through that surveillance. We're very open about data. We try to be very transparent. The health department also monitors all the vital statistics. We have a responsibility for signing birth and death certificates and monitoring those. We look at all those things that are happening, like on the births, looking at what is happening, what trimester of care are women getting care at, so that we can promote the best possible outcomes for pregnancy, and also sharing information with the community in the maps that we develop for Community Health Endowment to talk about different areas, not just disease surveillance, but what's happening with some other areas related to the social determinants of health. We are just going to be submitting our application for reaccreditation, and I'm very excited about that. We held a community health summit in May, and we had community members from various organizations there, but prior to that, we had done thousands of screenings out in the community where people reported their results about what was really important, and that includes the city and the county, and there was a statistical method used for that. And we also have been doing a lot of work with the cultural centers, and sometime if you're ever interested, I'd be really happy to share with you the outcome of that assessment and working directly with the community. We did a lot of community conversations, we call them, with those that are disabled, with those who have behavioral health needs, homeless, the various cultures in our community, as well as other representative groups in both rural and urban areas. So now where we're at, we're working on that improvement plan, and this is all being done in partnership with our hospitals, and we're really, really excited about that. Both Bryan and St. E's are fully in, and this will help not only in addressing some of those community health improvements, but we'll really have some goals that we can all be working forward with in a concerted effort. And next, we want to grow our equitable, inclusive community. We have a home visitation program. I'm sure you're going to have questions for me, but I just want to point out that we have been assisting families that have been identified at risk through a particular evidence-based models, and that's called Healthy Families America. So 80% of these mothers are screening positive for depression, and they are able, we work with them closely. They get in and get their referrals for mental health. They follow through with that. We have a very high success rate for breastfeeding. We have a high success rate for full-term deliveries. In an area where we also, that you're familiar with a little bit because of our hotline for COVID, but we have had an information and referral area for some time, but you can note those call numbers that dramatically increased during the 2020 to 21 time. And that line is manned by 2 nurses, and they do a lot of things. It's not just answering the phone. They actually connect people with needed resources and services and provide a method for them to get back when they have questions or their needs aren't being met. We're the largest provider of dental care for individuals with low incomes in our community, especially Medicaid. Medicaid coverage access is for those individuals is very limited. We serve a large number of non-English speaking individuals in the clinic and racial and ethnic minorities. We're seeing, in particular, you've heard, we've served over 427 actual refugees who've come in since last October, and many of the refugees have tremendous dental needs, and so we're working really hard to meet those needs for them, as well as our other community. We offer a lot of evening clinics. The clinics are staffed by employees primarily, but all our dentists are contract dentists, and that model has worked extremely well for the community. And it also helps, those dentists help tell the rest of the dental providers in the community what the needs are and what they're seeing. And then animal control, you know, you're going to hear a little bit more detail about that, but in that area, just so you have an idea, in our dispatch calls last year were 11,945, and our calls in for the last year were 30,243, and already just in the first 5 months of this year, we've assisted 13,807 families. So I'll talk to you a little bit more about some of the things we do, but you can see the bites, and the bite numbers are down. Well, why is that? That's because people weren't going out in the community the same way that they used to. But we've been dealing with a lot of other issues. Coyotes are one, bats are one. Over a year ago, we changed our scheduling, and working with our officers, decided to make this change to improve safety and be able to be really responsive about the bat calls. So we have a night officer on duty in their regular schedule time during bat season. So that's not only reduced overtime, but the thing that I'm most pleased about is that it really addressed the safety concern I had about our officers. Just, you can't ask somebody to be working those many hours. You have to make an adjustment. And I want to talk a little bit about our food safety program. You know, you can see our numbers are down. Why are our permits down? Well, that reflects what's happening with our workforce in the community and the ability to hire staff. So there would be actually lower permits done. But one thing we are doing, though, we offer classes in different languages, but right now online we're having the food handler's permit translated into Spanish. So I'm really happy. That I think is going to help a lot of our individuals in the community. And then, just so that you know, we do have an active food advisory committee that's made up of, you know, our establishments in the community and community members that guide some of the policies and practices that we make. And we've instituted active managerial control. And this program really is a consultation offered to all full-service restaurants to reduce the risk of foodborne illness. So what we're really trying to do is get people in line in doing the prevention aspect rather than the regulatory view of these are the problems we're seeing here. We want to do as much as we can to reduce that from happening. Donna talked a little bit about protecting the water system, and you can see 90% of our industries, which is one of the areas we monitor in public health, we've worked with them to have a minimal risk of illicit discharge into the stormwater. And people in the community know we do that because we get calls. And if people see something that looks like it's being dumped into the stormwater system, police, fire, LTU call us if there's a spill somewhere, and our team goes out and works to remediate that problem right away. The next thing Donna mentioned was we have the Has to Go program, and that really is working on minimizing the amount of toxic waste that goes to the landfill, those hazardous things. You can see last year that we diverted 130,000 tons of toxic waste from going to the landfill. Not only is that a reduction for the landfill, but that provides a safety and an environmentally important aspect for our community as we move forward. And in those collections, we serve both the city and the county out there, and we have staff that are out there. If you haven't been to the center, I'd encourage you sometime to go. And perhaps we can get Councilman Beckius out there when he comes to meet with us.
I'm ready.
We just completed our review of our policies with the Air Control Quality Advisory Board, and those were adopted by our Board of Health last week. You'll see that we've had a reduction in what our measure is for air quality last year, down to 85.7% instead of 90%. And that's related to all the wildfires and the other fires that we've had. We're actively work with Kansas on burn control when they do their scheduled burn control. So there's a whole group now that has come together to work with them on that, because what they do comes over to impact what we're doing. And then, you know, we have an ongoing relationship with our child cares. I always love looking at those pictures of those people, little people. And we provide technical assistance and training on a really regular basis. One of the things during the pandemic was really working to help the child cares remain open, make sure they had all the tools and equipment that they needed, but we're doing that constantly. We have a lot of outbreaks in the child care situation, and so we work with them, and we're going to continue really working with them closely as they grow and develop. Our goal is, you know, Lincoln has such a high percentage of parents who are both working, and child care is really a critical need. And we want that child care to be quality child care. We've also recently developed a car seat safety video in conjunction with Good Neighbors Center with the population there that can be used that are non-English speaking. And then, you know, we do a lot of fire prevention training, working with, through our Safe Kids, we have sports programs, other activities, bike safety, all of those things that are widely used in the community. And our car seat inspection program also has now been able to recruit firefighters with Chief Engler's strong support, so that people can go to their local fire station when they're available and get their car seat safety check. And I don't know about you, but if you've tried to put in a car seat lately, it's really a challenge.
It is.
But very important. Our chronic disease prevention is all those things. And one thing I want to just mention to you is, you know, we have had a colon cancer screening program for some time in our community. We're looking for ways to continue and expand that, but it is done in active partnership with our local pharmacies, and we're very proud of that. We're one of the few areas that does that. And we also do all the tests that come in for the colon cancer screening are run through our lab for all the other areas in the state. So the state health department contracts with us to do that. Then we want to protect the health and safety of our families. And you probably saw last week our press briefing on Lincoln being a lead-safe community. Nebraska is identified as one of the areas in the country with high lead levels. And if you look at this map in the center of your slide, that's telling you where our highest levels are. And we have to look at housing before 1978. But what we also know is that there is no safe level of lead, and that creates lifelong learning problems, neurological problems, and other health problems. And one of the things that's really important is people assume, yes, the housing stock is important, but where is the child going for childcare? Where are they doing other things? So that's why all children at 12 and 24 months should be tested for lead, and then they should be screened regularly. So we're going to be expanding that lead testing, that we've reallocated some of our resources, and we want to be able to offer more families that opportunity. But we're also partnering very closely with our local physicians, and then urban development through the program that they're doing to be able to go in for remediation. I'm sure Director Marvin will talk about that. But we also have our staff now at the Health Department and Environmental Health are trained to go out and do assessments. We've been able to purchase the equipment they need with the grant from Urban Development. And all of our nurses follow up with children with high lead levels and do home visits and connect with the physician to make sure. And then the next page is just showing you our various sections. We've made no changes, and what those areas are covering, no new divisions. We essentially have 6 divisions in the health department. And you can see it gives a listing, not all of them. One thing I want to point out in the section under health promotion, we do have a community coalition that's been active and working in a strategic plan there. And I think that's important because the opioid resettlement dollars are going to be coming into the city, and so we'll want to visit about some effective ways to do that. There's 2 different funding streams. One to the city and the county are smaller, and I've had an opportunity to speak with the county a little bit. But I think we have a coalition that's made up of a lot of our providers and community members that have an idea to really want to focus on prevention, because there'll be other funding for treatment and those things. So just mentioning that. This next slide, you can see our FTEs, and this reflects the changes that would be made with what we're asking for in this budget. Again, I want to point out we're one of those agencies, we're a department, we're city-county funded. So you can see that what percentage, general fund is 35% of our funding, and the county, and this picture is showing 16, but it's really the county funds 37% of what we have in the city than the other portion of that. And you could see that, we have 18 million, a little over 18 million from the city county funds, and then we have an additional 8770 in grant funds. And those little pictures there kind of show you what some of those programs might be. Our WIC, our nutrition services, has to go, and Lancaster County, Lincoln Lancaster Keep Beautiful. This is our current, what we're projecting out for the budget as we move forward. And we have 3 separate funds at the department. One's the health fund, animal control fund, and air are 3 separate funds that we have. The first area that we want to ask for this year, moving on into that, is to our universal home visitation program. This is something I visited about when I first came back to the health department, based on what we're seeing nationally and the issues that have arisen, and we know that early identification and connection for families is really important to really optimize their long-term health. So postpartum care really should be a full assessment of the physical and psychological well-being for these families. And every family, no matter who you are, I remember when I had our daughter, I was a nurse, and there were a lot of things that you have questions about. You don't know all of them just by virtue of who you are or what your income is. what we're trying to do is really focus people on identifying resources and connecting them quickly. We would use evidence-based model from Durham Family Connect, and all mothers of newborns would be offered a visit. And of course, physicians could contact us sooner if they have a concern. Our plan is to reach 60 to 70% of these families with newborns. That would be about 1,900 to 2,000. And the cost is really $500 to $700 per birth. On the low end, we would look at 60% of the families receiving a visit. The cost for fiscal year 2023 is about $700,000, and the estimate for 24, if we were fully out, that is $735,000, a little more. The state is allocating new funds for local public health departments this next fiscal year, starting July 1. And Lincoln Lancaster is slated to receive $248,000 ongoing funding from the state, and we plan to apply that towards the program. To establish the program, we're going to use fund balance in the first year, right now, to cover that, and then incrementally increase from the fund balance for cost in fiscal year 24. So also just a reminder, the city-county tax funds will begin to apply 33%, but as the health fund balance is phased out. But the county will also be contributing to this funding as well. And some will ask, why do we recommend this for all families? Why don't we identify the at-risk families? We already are working with those families that come to our attention, but what about the families we don't know, or the families that have a minimal situation? I don't know that any of us can judge who should have a visit and who shouldn't. Families that might be struggling or have a need for a connection for a resource, that doesn't matter what their income level is or where they live or what they have available, we can maximize that. We do know that it offers a non-stigmatizing approach, and there's a high rate of acceptance for families, and that's really important because families are really vulnerable at the time of a birth. We know that there's research that's shown that there's been a 44% lower rates of child protective investigations. We know that there's reduced risk, higher improvements in access to quality child care. And really, one of the things, and I mentioned that on our at-risk families that we're visiting now, there's a high rate of postpartum depression. And this will help us work really closely with our providers in the community and help mothers to know. And so those are just a few of the things about the importance, and I'm open to answering any question. The other area I wanted to talk about, and I talked to you a little bit about, was our dental health program. We're really experiencing some challenges completing our billing for Medicaid in a really timely manner. And difficulty in recruiting part-time dental assistants. You know, one of the things we're looking at is our salaries and how we do it, so we're really trying to move that forward by adding another full-time dental assistant to the program. We will cover this with health funds the first year, and by the second year it'll continue out of health fund until we're able to collect in fee base. You know, working with Medicaid is really challenging, but that's one of the reasons why we continue to provide care, because people have nowhere to go to get care. It's very limited amount, but Medicaid requires specific things, all radiological exam. It's quite a process to be able to do it, and I understand why some of our private providers, it just is overwhelming to try and participate. So I think that's why we have so many who are willing to come to the health department and work. And we also have a good network of providing care to people who have a real problem. We don't cap our services, and we continue to provide that on a sliding fee scale. So this is really the intent, that we'll be able to move this over into a fee-based program. Then the next area is the infrastructure that supports the reduction of negative effects of climate change. The young, the old, racial and ethnic minorities, those who work outside and animals are impacted the most. But these challenges are really affect every member of our community. And you can see the extreme heat, extreme storms, and floods, and that impact what happens in our community. We've already done an assessment. We tried to get a grant from CDC, but we weren't successful. It was approved, but we didn't get the funding that goes along with the improvement. So what we're doing is we have a 0.25 already, a vacancy already funded. But now we're taking a different approach to offsetting the cost of this position. So we'll take user fees from 0.25 of air, 0.25 of water, and 0.25 of waste. So that's how we're going to get the position to move forward and carry on. Then the next one is Donna was talking about our stabilizing our waste reduction, how important that is to the public health, and recycling and exposure to hazardous materials. The state has limited the amount of funding we can get from them, from the environmental agency. So what we're proposing to do is move our environmental educator that covers both waste and the Keep Lincoln Beautiful areas that works with the neighborhoods and other community members to onto the health area. And then we will increase, that same amount of funding from the state to handle hazardous waste materials. So we'll be able to get that. We're very limited in what we can. We get $5 in benefits for any personnel from the state. That's their limit. So actually, this, I think, will be a win-win for us because we'll get more that the city and county isn't paying for waste reduction, and we'll have our staff on to cover both the programs. And then the last area is adding an animal control officer. I think we all realize that our community has grown considerably. The last time we added an officer was in 2007. And if you look at that map that you're showing, those shows all the areas that we've annexed. Since that time to cover, we've had a considerable increase. Our animal control officers, we only have 9. They cover, except for during the summertime, during bat season, they cover 2 shifts, but they're on call 24/7. We have somebody available. And, we also assist fire and police as well as them assisting us. When they have calls, sometimes we're called out at night to assist when they need to enter a home and there might be a vicious animal. They're going out and removing that animal, but at the same time, when we have an animal that's determined dangerous or vicious in the community, we go to police and they assist us in obtaining the warrants and seizing the animal when they're not relinquished. Whoops, I want to go back to that. And the other thing I think that it's important to know, we intend to, we'll fund this position from the health fund in the coming year, and then we intend to raise our fees. We haven't raised our fees from 2018, since 2018. We want to raise the fees $2. Our fees are still below other areas, especially like Omaha and in other cities for licensing. Right now, I believe it's $21 for an altered animal. We also work with senior citizens or those that can't pay their fees. We have some funding to assist them. We also have some funds that we've been able to build up to assist our owners who want to have their animal neutered. So one of the most important things is to be able then, we anticipate this position then will be covered by fees with the increase. We've seen that before. And I think that's a reasonable approach when you look at the increase of our city and our size. And we've also added these other areas where we're doing education with owners. But right now, and people following up is really hard on lapse licenses because we just don't have the staff to do it. And I really want to be responsive. And we're seeing all kinds of other situations arise in the community. And I want to be responsive to our community. It's really critical for what we're doing overall. So then I mentioned before that data guides and informs our operations. You can see how we measure our investigations, our contact tracing. What do we look at for our nuisance complaints? How are we responding in the community? That's very important to us, that we are able to respond to the members of our community in a very efficient and quick manner to help them. That's part of our customer service that's there. And you should know that equity is incorporated into every program service that we offer in the community. And then, we're working on our environmental hazards. We're measuring those. And when you see these measures and the targets, just know that we're monitoring these all the time. These aren't something we develop and then they sit on the shelf and we don't go back to look at them. And we're still working a lot with our dental services and knowing that. We do go out the dental team goes out to some of the child cares in the schools and provides dental sealants and dental screening. It's not just the work that's done in the clinic. And that dental clinic was one of the few places that was open in the community where people felt safe that they could come in so that we could make sure people were getting their emergency needs and some routine care taken care of. And reducing injury is a major part of what we do. We're working on constantly getting data from the hospitals and working on how we can see what's coming in and what we can do, working with our partners at Aging on reducing falls. And I'm really proud of what the team's been doing with diverting environmental hazards from the landfill, as I mentioned. So that's all. Any questions?
Thank you, Director Lopez. I appreciate it. Due to our timing here and some constraints that Councilwoman Washington brought to our attention, why don't we go ahead and, if it's okay with my fellow councilors, save any questions for Director Lopez to ask her directly and her staff? And we will thank you very much, Director Lopez.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
I hope I stayed on time. I was trying.
No,
to
you were fine. It's that darn LTU, I tell you.
I know. I don't want to go behind them.
Thank you, Director Lopez.
Thank
we'll
you.
invite
Just
Director Marvin
let
up.
me know.
Yep, we'll invite Director Marvin up, and Director Marvin, it's good.
Seventh inning stretch.
Yeah. It's good to see you. I would love it if you could maybe.
I can do it in 20.
20 would be great because Director Carey has a planning commission in here, and I think he has an agenda that will draw some constituents out.
Okay. All right.
So if we could maybe get done in 20 minutes, Director, that would be great.
We can do it in 20.
Okay.
And you can stretch while I talk. All right?
And I just pulled.
So I don't like reading slides, but I'm going to start by reading the slide. We're going to start with a mission statement.
Okay.
And then as we go through and you see some of the pictures, some of the work that we do, I want you to see and try to tie that back to what our mission statement is. So our mission statement is urban development promotes neighborhood vitality through affordable, accessible housing initiatives, redevelopment programs, and efforts to enhance the social and community capital through reinvigoration of the community spaces. These efforts are supported through housing programs, neighborhood revitalization, community redevelopment of blighted and substandard areas, and improvements to public spaces such as streetscape. Urban development also manages garages, surface lots, street parkings, other parking related services, downtown parking enforcement, and parking citation management. Through these operations, we help maintain a vibrant city. So how do we do that? Well, first we'll go to the slide that shows the organizational chart. We have myself as the director, we have an assistant director, and then we have 3 divisions: livable neighborhoods, administration, and economic opportunities. 22.5 FTEs. We're going to show that that's grown. We're going to show how we've paid for that and an explanation for why that number went up. And what you'll see, I think I can highlight this one here, which is the lead hazard program. We applied for a grant, received, and I know Director Lopez talked about that. So we're working cooperatively with the health department, but there's 2 aspects to lead hazard control. One is identifying those individuals, basically age 6 and under, who have elevated blood levels, and then what are the efforts, and that would be what urban development does, what are the efforts to go in and remediate the sources of lead within those homes. And basically what we're talking about is lead paint. Because of the grant that we've received from HUD of $3.4 million, there's an obligation that we have to do to have people administer that, and that took our count up by 2 individuals. All the other levels you'll see have not changed.
And that grant you speak of funds those 2 positions.
And that grant does. So just going back, the general funded, the number of people that are paid for in urban development with general funds is 9.3 FTEs. So within livable neighborhoods, the 2 main sources of funds are CDBG funds and home funds, or some ESG dollars. We serve basically as a pass-through for some of those. Our lead hazard control or paint removal is part of this as well. We did receive a slight reduction in CDBG funds. We saw an increase in home funds. Some of the uses that we have with CDBG funds, you can see the streetscape work that we've done down 11th Street, and also we fund, annually we fund administrative costs over with community crops. On the left, what you will see is what was described as the worst alley in the city of Lincoln. And on the right, you will see that same alley that is no longer the worst alley. It faced severe issues with water. So the reason there's pavers in there is to help address the way to drain water out of that alley. And now we're working our way up. I think we've identified the 2nd worst alley in the city of Lincoln. We will use some CDBG funds on that. But I think this was a cooperative effort between watershed management on some of the design and efforts to address water quality and drainage. And then obviously we've got a surface in there as well that is an improved alley. Our home funds, like I say, home fund dollar increased a little bit. The personnel services that you'll see, the jump in that, again, would be related to the lead paint using the grant funds to help cover the cost of the employees within that program. So here's an example of some of the rehab work that we've done. On the left, you'll see an older tub. You have to be able to step in and out of it, so it's difficult to get in and out. On the right, you'll see the same bathroom within it. It's a smaller step in. There's a railing in there so that you can be able to maintain your balance, and significant improvements to that bathroom. I think it would have been a challenge on the left to be able to get up and down the steps. And what we did was we kept the architectural integrity by just doing the masonry work and replacing the bricks and improving that area. On the left, and I do have a corrected picture here, but on the left what you'll see is a garage with the roof that is caving in. I'll let you hand.
Kind of a screened in front porch.
A better picture showing the condition of the garage
right there.
after we went in there, the roof isn't caving in, it's in much better shape.
All right. I'm going to keep this one.
It's amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
So economic opportunities, this would be general funded employees. These would be the typical projects that we've been down here. We've been down here for Woolham, most recently, all the plan amendments that come before you, those types of tax increment financing projects that we've brought down to help address blight in the areas that are designated as blight. I think the most recent one would be Bishop Heights. But I want to talk a little bit on the next slide, a little bit about one of the things that is not generally talked about when we do bring a tax increment financing project to you. And that is that we work very hard at keeping the architectural integrity of what's brought to this body and is approved. So on the left is the rendering that would have been in the packet that you would have seen for the hotel that is on Innovation Campus. And on the right is that hotel that is up and operational. So one of the things that I think you can communicate to your constituencies is there is a process that's rather unique. It's a little bit, there are additional steps as far as going towards tax increment financing, but there is an approval process that starts with the Urban Design Committee or Historic Preservation. Woolham Project would have gone through Historic Preservation. Let's show you what we're going to do. Let's bring it to this body and have them approve it. But then we have an FT, one FTE, who makes sure. Now, I'm not going to say this happens in all cases. There are some exceptions, especially with the changes in prices in construction. But let us keep as close to the architectural rendering that this body is approving to what is the final completed project. So I think that's an added element. This particular project, I know, was one that was approved just before I became director, but as an example of the challenges that this one have, creating that curved archway in front of the doorway was there was some value engineering that needed to be done. But yet the original rendering and what we completed is a very close, as close proximity as we could get with the challenges that were brought about by creating that archway into the building. And then the other thing that I know that I've visited with Councilman Shob about is that what you had here before was an Applebee's, a one-story Applebee's. What we put in place is a building that's close to the limit of 275 feet. That yes, it used 15-year TIF, but when that 15-year TIF comes off, what we will be receiving are property taxes on a much, much larger building than what we had before. And I think there's a story to be told there as far as the prudence that this body gets by being able to provide TIF for the construction of that building, and the back end, when the TIF is paid off, we have a much more substantial building. Yeah. So again, building on the left, that is the rendering. Building on the right, it's not completed yet. That's a recent picture, but we will have buildings that that come forward that when they are completed are faithful to the schematic designs that this body is approving. And then what Dallas took this picture because in between these two buildings you see the little spire of the church on D Street. So kind of an interesting design. And Telegraph has been quite successful in terms of developing out. Telegraph, what you'll see on the right is the building that's coming up. The demand for residential in the downtown area has been quite good, and they've moved up their various phases so that they've got that phase coming along, and then I think there'll be another phase that will be building out parts of Telegraph as well. Parking operations. We've had a lot of conversations about parking operations, about the challenges that we faced from the pandemic, and I think there was really no department that faced greater challenges from the pandemic than the parking operations. When the pandemic first hit, we saw reductions in demand by as much as 90% for downtown on-street parking. We're still working through with remote work, the challenges from all that, but we're getting ourselves out of that pandemic-stricken type of cliff that we went off. There are surface lots that are part of our operations as well. Sometimes our surface lots can later become sites where future development can occur as well. We did a parking garage. This one's a rather unique one. This one does not have gate arms that you can go in and out. There's pay stations in the garage. This is mostly for monthly parkers, but when you go through, it will read your license plate. You just drive in, it clicks and it knows that you've gone in there, and then when you drive out, it clicks and it knows that you've left the building. And it is all done without the use of crossing arms. There's a lot of changes that are going on in parking operations, and the funds, there are the crossing arms that we have in the existing parking garages. Those are all at end of life, and so what we're trying to explore is what are the technological changes that we want to take advantage of? What are the ones that because technology changes so rapidly, the investments that we are making have to be for 10+ years. So if we make an investment in something that really only has about a 3-year shelf life, that's not a good investment for us. But we're going through and trying to identify multiple ways for people to enter and exit the parking garages in the downtown as easy as they can, the most touch-free, so they're not interacting with people. And because they are more digital, it requires fewer employees, or without growing the number of employees that we have with our parking operations. This is a garage that will open in probably August to September of this year. It's called Gold 4, and it's right down next to the apartments that Speedway is building up along N Street. See how am I doing on time? I'm doing okay. I think many of you have been in to see the command center and seen how that works. So now what you're really talking about are 2 to 3 employees that really can help in the ingress and egress out of all the parking garages that we operate. Rather than having people in each individual parking building, we can really basically run a lot of our parking garages through our command center, which is located in the old, it's called Center Park now, but back in the day it was called Centrum. The administration, it provides a number of support services. We sell the real estate for the city of Lincoln. BID administration, I'll point out because that is going to be coming to you at some point in the future. And these are the BIDs that we currently administer. We're expecting a pending increase in the downtown BID district, and those borders will be approved by this body as they work through having those conversations with those parts of the downtown that are looking to expand it. I point out South 48th. There's been some discussions on South 48th. There's some additional parking because Prescott, that area, 48th and Prescott, has done quite well from a retail perspective. But the good that that does from expanded retail means that there's more cars, and so there's some demand for parking down there. And we have to explore ways of trying to solve that problem. Surplus property on the right is the picture of 27th and Old Cheney. That's a building that is going to be a brain surgery operation. It's going up. It's quite good-looking building. Doesn't have the height that you would have had if it would have been an apartment building, so I think it fits with the area. The building on the left is the fire station that this body recently surplused, and we're actively going through trying to sell that property. Impacts, I just spent a couple of minutes on this. You'll remember the early slide that I showed. We have 9.3 FTEs on the general fund. We're administering nearly $75 million in COVID funds that we've received since the pandemic came out. Significant amounts of rent utility dollars, but other dollars as well, which would be home ARP funds of $4.1 million that we think can eventually address issues related to homelessness, and ESG and other expanded dollars that we've had to address homelessness as well. And just on the rent utilities, is a quick slide to show you who are we helping. We've helped 4,220 households, of which nearly 70% of them make 30% or less in area median income. So we are reaching out and helping people, providing rent utility assistance, and the folks that we are helping are people at the lower end of the spectrum. Goals, we want to continue to use TIF as a tool to eliminate blight and enhance economic opportunities. We're developing a 20-year TIF policy. From parking operations, we're going to open Gold 4 in fall of 22. We're going to complete an RFP selection process for a new parking manager, and we're going to create a document that will give us insight on how to manage our parking operations for the next 10 years. On the livable neighborhood side, we're going to implement our Affordable Housing Action Plan as we've been doing. We're going to expand and implement Lead Safe Lincoln, and we're going to continue to provide rent utilities. And I want you to take note of the end, through the end of 2022. Those funds have a shelf life, and I think you will start receiving contacts from constituents. Hey, I'm not receiving rent utility assistance anymore. Those dollars were only earmarked for a certain period of time. September of 2022 was what Congress originally set that for. They've allowed it to slide back to December 2022, but ERA 1 funds are reaching a point of expiration, and we will provide plenty of timeline for people who are receiving it so they can adjust to that. But I can imagine that you will receive emails and questions in regards to that. These are federal rules that we're trying to follow. Administration, we're going to, Pat and her team will administer CDBG, home, ESG, and COVID funds. We're digitizing, we're tracking affordable housing goals. This body approved, since we've had the Affordable Housing Action Plan, we've approved 500 new dwelling units, and we have rehabbed 500 affordable dwelling units since the Affordable Housing Action Plan had passed. And we're going to work on our brownfield grant administration. Again, we're back to the mission. I submit that what our mission statement says at the beginning, that's what we're doing. And I'll open it up for questions, or let David Carey come up and address this body as well.
Questions for Director Marvin?
Option B, we're going to hold. I think we should hold.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Marvin. John, anything else you would like to add before we wrap up?
Run from the room.
Nope. I'll just do a quick wrap, and I'll put this slide up so that to make sure that when people watch on LNK TV, they can pause on this. This is also up on the city website, just to remind folks of the budget calendar and the budget process that remains before us. So we appreciate you taking the time to have this so that we can present to you and present to the public. We'll certainly get the follow-up with the questions that were recorded, and departments and myself and budget remain available for continued conversation and information for you as we continue to develop the process going forward. So I already got some small stuff there. Essentially, it's got the council having time to review what they've been presented and then talk about any potential early tentative changes that might be presented to the public, all angling towards the public hearing that happens on the first Monday on August 1st. And then there'll be that'll be the hearing, and then council will have another round of deliberations ahead of approval of a budget towards the very end of August.
Very good. Thank you, John.
Thank you so much.
We will call it a day. Thank you. We're adjourned.
We're adjourned. Thanks.